Have you ever felt like someone else's moods, chaos, or pain is quietly stealing your peace? Like every time you're around them, your energy drops, your mind spins, and you end up carrying a weight that was never yours to begin with. It happens more often than we admit. And most people don't even realize they're trapped in emotional bonds that quietly drain the life out of them. But here's the truth. You don't have to keep absorbing their negativity. You don't have to carry their burden. Buddhism offers a path, not to hate, not to fight, but to gently release. A way to protect your peace without closing your heart. A way to love without losing yourself. That's what we're going to learn tonight. In this video, you're going to discover the best Buddhist lessons to help you detach from negative people with clarity, calm, and compassion. These aren't just abstract ideas. They're tools you can actually use right now to stop the emotional roller coaster and take your energy back. So get ready, because by the end of this, something inside you will shift, and sleep will come easier. Not just because your body is tired, but because your mind is finally free. Before we begin, I want you to make a small promise to yourself. Write in the comments, "Starting tonight, I release what doesn't belong to me. I am free." You're not just typing words, you're planting a seed. The more you say it, the more it grows, until one day, it becomes your new truth. So write it now, and let's begin. Before we begin, take a deep breath and pause, because now we are going to step into one of the hardest truths to accept. The part of ourselves that gives too much, holds on too tightly, and calls it kindness. This is where many get trapped. This is where compassion becomes a prison. And this is where our healing begins. There is a kind of pain that doesn't come from being hurt, but from loving someone so much that you forget where they end and you begin. It doesn't start loud. It creeps in quietly, disguised as care, as support, as understanding. You see someone suffering and your heart opens. You want to help, to lift them, to carry them, and at first it feels good, it feels noble, but slowly, without realizing, you start shrinking your world to fit theirs. You stop checking in with yourself. Their emotions become yours, their problems become yours, their peace or lack of it begins to control your day. That's not compassion, that's enmeshment. Buddhism teaches that true compassion, known as karuna, is not about losing yourself in another person's suffering. It is about recognizing their pain without absorbing it. It is standing beside them with an open heart, but with both feet firmly rooted in your own clarity. But this version of compassion is not what most people practice. What most call compassion is often a hidden craving, a craving to be needed, to be loved, to be seen as good. And craving in any form leads to suffering. It is easy to fall into the belief that the more you suffer for someone, the more it proves your love. That if you just give more, they will finally change or heal or notice your effort. But Buddhism doesn't work that way. Buddhism teaches that every being is responsible for their own liberation. You can walk beside someone. You can even point them toward the path. But you cannot walk it for them. And if you try, you will only delay your own freedom. Emotional enmeshment happens when your sense of identity becomes tied to someone else's state of being. You stop feeling like an individual and start feeling like a mirror, reflecting their anger, their sadness, their anxiety. When they are calm, you are calm. When they are upset, you can't sleep. You call it love, but it is really fear. Fear that if you stop caring so much, they will fall apart. Or worse, that you will be seen as heartless. But Buddhist compassion has nothing to do with pleasing others. It has everything to do with wisdom. Karuna is not reactive. It does not rush to fix or rescue. It watches. It understands suffering deeply, not with panic, but with presence. True compassion knows that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is step back. Not out of anger, not out of coldness, but out of clarity. The Buddha never taught attachment as a path to freedom. He taught release. He taught presence without clinging. When someone you love is in pain, your instinct may be to hold on tighter. But what if the act of holding on is keeping both of you stuck? What if, instead of helping them rise, you are simply joining them in the pit? That is where karuna becomes a guide. It is not passive. It does not walk away from pain, but it also does not kneel to it. It says, I see your suffering, and I will not abandon you, but I will not drown with you either. That is the balance. That is the strength. And that is the version of compassion that liberates rather than traps. There is also an identity that forms around being the healer or the rescuer. It feels good to be the one others turn to. There is a subtle ego boost in being needed. But if your role becomes your worth, you will keep attracting people who remain broken just to keep you relevant. That is not healthy. That is not love. That is attachment dressed in a savior's robe. In Buddhist practice, every act of compassion begins with mindfulness. Before helping someone, ask yourself if you are responding from presence or from guilt. Ask yourself if you are acting from love or from fear of being abandoned. Ask yourself if you are helping them grow or just trying to keep them close. These are difficult questions, but asking them creates space for real freedom. When compassion becomes unhealthy, it starts looking like self-sacrifice. You cancel your plans to help them. You lie awake thinking about their problems. You feel guilty when you take time for yourself, and slowly you begin to disappear. That is not spiritual. That is not noble. That is a wound trying to earn its place in someone else's life. The Buddha's compassion was fierce and clear. He did not enable suffering. He illuminated it. He taught that pain exists, but so does the end of pain. And that journey begins with truth. The truth that no matter how much you love someone, you cannot live their karma for them. Their healing is their path. Your peace is yours. Many people confuse boundaries with rejection. They think that if you set limits, you are being cold. But in Buddhism, boundaries are wisdom. They protect your energy so you can stay present. They are not walls, they are clarity. Saying no does not mean you do not care. It means you care enough not to enable cycles that keep both of you trapped. The reason unhealthy compassion feels so exhausting is because it is rooted in resistance. You are constantly resisting what is. You want them to be different. You want them to wake up. You want them to stop hurting. But what if the most compassionate thing you can do is let them be exactly where they are? That does not mean you approve of their pain. It means you stop fighting reality. And from that acceptance, real change can begin. There is a deep stillness that arises when you no longer need someone to change for you to be at peace. That is when you know compassion has matured. It no longer demands. It no longer clings. It simply flows like water around a stone, soft but unshakable. A common trap in enmeshed compassion is believing that suffering makes the love real, that if you suffer enough for them, they will finally understand. But Buddhism says suffering is not the proof of love. Presence is, clarity is, peace is. You do not have to bleed to be kind. You do not have to break yourself to hold space for someone else. True karuna is gentle but honest. It does not avoid hard truths. It says that this is hurting me and steps back when needed. It says, I love you, but I will not lose myself to stay close to you. That kind of compassion transforms both people, not through control, but through conscious presence. And here is something rarely talked about. Sometimes compassion means grieving the version of the relationship you thought you had. It means letting go of the fantasy that your love can fix them. That is not cold. That is maturity. That is the kind of heart Buddhism builds, a heart that can hold space for suffering without becoming it. There is also the fear of abandonment that drives unhealthy compassion. You give too much because you are afraid they will leave. But the deeper fear is that if they leave, you will be empty. Buddhism helps you see that emptiness is not something to fear. It is a space of clarity, a space where you no longer depend on someone else's presence to feel whole. Karuna, in its purest form, is fearless. It is not afraid to say no. It is not afraid to walk away. It is not afraid to sit in silence when words would only repeat old patterns. It is a compassion rooted in understanding, not desperation. In steadiness, not emotional bargaining. And perhaps the most freeing realization is this: you are not responsible for anyone's awakening. You are only responsible for yours. When you let go of the illusion that your suffering will save someone else, you make room for both of you to grow. You stop being their crutch and start being a mirror, reflecting what is possible when someone chooses their own path with clarity and courage. That is not abandonment. That is love with wisdom. So the next time you feel the urge to rescue, pause. Ask yourself if you are doing this from presence or from pain. Let that question become your compass. Let karuna lead you not into emotional storms, but through them with grace. Because in the end, real compassion is not about carrying someone else's burden. It is about lighting your own lamp and letting it shine so others can find their way too. And that is how compassion stops being a cage and starts becoming the key. When compassion becomes heavy, when it starts to wear down your peace instead of lifting you into presence, it is often because it has become tangled in something deeper: identity. The belief that your role in someone's life defines your worth. That being the one who helps, saves, or sacrifices is who you are. But that belief is not love. It is a quiet rope pulling you into patterns of suffering, and to be free, you must see the rope clearly. There is a moment in every relationship where care begins to blur into obligation, where kindness begins to feel like a performance, where helping becomes a script you cannot stop reciting. Buddhism points directly to the heart of this confusion. It shows that the suffering does not come from others, but from the identities you wrap around your presence. The more tightly you cling to a role, the more distance you create from your true self. Being the rescuer can feel powerful. Being the fixer makes you feel valuable. Being the helper gives you purpose. But when those roles take over, you no longer respond to people as they are. You respond based on who you think you need to be. The moment identity replaces presence, clarity begins to vanish. You are no longer acting from love, but from an idea of what love is supposed to look like. Buddhism teaches that the self is empty. Not empty in a sad or lonely way, but empty of fixed nature. Your identity is not solid. It is shaped by habits, stories, expectations, and fear. These roles are not who you are. They are temporary masks. But when you forget that they are masks, they become cages. The rescuer, for example, thrives on feeling needed, but the more they are needed, the more trapped they feel. They want to help, but secretly long to rest. They give endlessly, but start to wonder why they are the only one giving. Their compassion is no longer rooted in freedom. It is rooted in fear. Fear that if they stop helping, they will lose their place in the relationship. Fear that if they stop fixing, no one will value them. This fear is subtle but powerful. It keeps you on call even when you are tired. It makes you say yes even when your body says no. It silences your boundaries because speaking them might threaten your role. And in trying to keep peace, you end up breaking your own. When you are trapped in identity, even love becomes a transaction. You love in hopes of being appreciated. You give in hopes of being seen. You sacrifice in hopes of being remembered. But true love asks for nothing. It flows from fullness, not emptiness, from clarity, not craving. Untangling from identity means watching your habits without judgment. Notice when you feel the need to save someone. Notice when your silence is really fear of rejection. Notice when your giving is really a plea to be noticed. These observations are not meant to shame you, they are meant to wake you up. Because once you see the pattern, you can step outside it. There is freedom in not needing to be the hero. There is peace in being ordinary. There is power in doing nothing when doing nothing is wise. Buddhism invites you to rest in that space, the space where you are not anyone's solution, the space where your worth is not tied to anyone's approval, the space where love is given freely, without strings. Roles form early in life. Maybe you were the one who kept the family calm. Maybe you learned to solve problems so others would not fall apart. Maybe being strong kept you from being a burden. These patterns run deep. They shaped how you see yourself. But they are not permanent. You are not locked in them. They are not who you truly are. Meditation helps you see the space between reaction and awareness. The space between being pulled into a role and choosing to be present. You learn to respond, not from habit, but from clarity. And clarity dissolves the rope. The longer you cling to a role, the more you invite imbalance. In a relationship where one person is always giving, the other may forget how to grow. In a dynamic where one person always listens, the other may stop reflecting. When roles dominate, honesty fades. When honesty fades, love becomes fragile. You may fear that without these roles, the relationship will fall apart. That, if you stop being the one who holds it all together, everything will collapse. But that collapse may be a blessing, because what falls away was never real connection. It was performance. It was control. It was identity wrapped in love's clothing. Some people may resist when you stop playing your old part. They may guilt you, accuse you of changing, or say you no longer care. Let them. Their discomfort is not your responsibility. It is a sign that the role was serving them too. And if they leave, let them leave. You are not losing love. You are making space for truth. You do not have to fix everything. You do not have to be everything. You are allowed to step back. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to say, "This is not mine to carry." Let go of needing to be seen as good. Let go of needing to be understood. Let go of needing to be right. These needs come from identity, and identity comes from fear. But your true nature is not afraid. It does not cling. It does not perform. It simply is. The Buddha did not teach people to become saviors. He taught them to become free. And from that freedom, kindness flows. But it is not the kindness that drains. It is the kindness that heals. It does not bind. It releases. If you are always helping, ask why. If you are always giving, ask what you hope to receive. If you are always rescuing, ask what part of you needs saving. These questions lead inward, and the inward path is the only one that truly liberates. Let yourself be more than the role. Let yourself be more than the mask. Let yourself return to the simple truth that you are already whole. You do not need to earn your place. You do not need to prove your value. You do not need to wear yourself down to be seen. Love is not measured by how much pain you absorb. It is measured by how much presence you offer. And presence cannot exist when you are trapped in identity. When you sit in silence and observe your mind, you will see how often it pulls you toward a role. It tells you to answer, to fix, to please. Watch it, but do not follow. Let the urge rise, let it fall, and stay with yourself. Every time you pause before reacting, you are loosening the rope. Every time you choose rest over rescue, you are untangling the knot. Every time you listen without trying to solve, you are returning to presence. This is the path. It is not selfish to step back. It is not cold to set boundaries. It is not wrong to be quiet. What is wrong is believing you must sacrifice your peace to earn your place in someone's life. The more you identify with the role, the more pain you will feel when that role is no longer needed. And eventually, all roles fade. People grow. Dynamics shift. Life changes. If your sense of self is wrapped in what you do for others, you will always feel threatened by change. But if your sense of self rests in presence, then you are steady, no matter the roles that come or go. Begin now. Unhook from the belief that your value comes from service. Detach from the urge to always offer. Breathe in your own enoughness. Sit with your own presence. Let your relationships be based on mutual truth, not silent performance. Let your care be clean, not covered in expectation. Let your love be strong, not stretched into exhaustion. This is what it means to live without the rope. To be here without pretending. To be kind without clinging. To be yourself without apology. Once you begin to untangle yourself from the roles you thought defined you, a new space opens. A quiet, raw space where truth becomes clearer. But this space can feel unstable, especially when others continue changing around you. Just when you think you have found balance, someone close to you behaves differently. Their attitude shifts, their mood turns, their energy is unpredictable, and suddenly your peace feels fragile again. Because even after letting go of identity, there is still something left to face. The truth that nothing stays the same, not even the people we love. There is something deeply unsettling about watching someone change in front of you. Someone who once brought comfort may now bring confusion. Someone who used to be consistent may now act like a stranger. One moment they are warm, the next they are cold, and your mind races to explain it. What did I do? Why are they like this now? Are they becoming someone else? Buddhism teaches the law of impermanence, called anicca. Everything changes, the body changes, thoughts change, emotions shift like wind. And human behavior, no matter how familiar it once felt, is also part of this flow. Yet we resist this truth when it shows up in the people we care about. We want their behavior to be steady, their character to remain predictable, their tone, energy, and presence to match our memory of them. But none of these are permanent, and the more we try to hold them in place, the more tension we create in ourselves. When someone changes, our minds often go to blame or disappointment. We accuse them of being inconsistent. We assume their shift means they are becoming less genuine or less caring, but this is not always the case. Sometimes, change is just the unfolding of new conditions. A stressful day, a difficult memory, a fear they are not voicing. People carry entire storms inside them that we will never see, and when we demand that they stay pleasant, available, and soft, we are asking them to deny their humanity. Recognizing impermanence in human behavior allows you to relate with less tension. You stop expecting others to meet your emotional needs in exactly the same way every time. You start to hold their presence with more openness and curiosity. You stop reacting to every change as if it were permanent. This frees you from the roller coaster of disappointment. Even those we love most are not always what we want them to be, and that is not a flaw. It is the truth of existence. Everything is constantly shifting, including our emotions, our thoughts, and our behaviors. When you resist this, you suffer. But when you accept it, you begin to flow with life rather than against it. Someone might be cheerful one day and withdrawn the next. Your instinct may be to wonder what you did wrong, but often it has nothing to do with you. They are simply passing through a different wave of experience. Let them. Their mood is not your responsibility. Their shift is not a threat. Their silence is not always a rejection. Anicca teaches that behavior is not identity. A person is not defined by their worst moment, nor their best. These are just passing expressions. What you see is not always what is true at the core, and even if it is, that truth will still evolve. You do not have to fight that evolution. You do not have to attach to the version of someone that once made you feel safe. You can let go. You can let people grow. You can let people flow. This mindset allows for more love, not less. Because you stop trying to freeze people, you stop treating their behavior like a promise. You meet them as they are today, not as you hoped they would always be. That kind of love is light. That kind of connection is real. When you cling to a fixed image of someone, you stop seeing them clearly. You speak to a memory instead of a person. You argue with who they used to be, not with who is in front of you now. This creates distance. It turns love into a demand. But when you let go of the old image, you open the door to real understanding. Practicing this does not mean tolerating harm or disrespect. It means knowing that behavior, even painful behavior, comes from causes and conditions. It does not excuse it, but it explains why reacting with judgment only increases pain. You can set boundaries while still accepting that others will change. You can walk away while still holding compassion. You can say no without needing to fix them. There is power in not needing others to be perfect. There is peace in not requiring others to be predictable. There is freedom in saying, I will relate to who you are now and not who I wish you were. When someone disappoints you, take a moment before responding. Ask yourself if you are hurt by their behavior or by the belief that their behavior should not have changed. Often, it is the second. The story that people must always be consistent in order for you to feel safe creates pressure. Pressure on them to stay the same. Pressure on you to manage the difference. When you let that go, you become more resilient, more patient, more able to witness life as it truly is. This does not mean becoming indifferent. It means becoming wiser in how you engage. When a river shifts direction, the trees along the bank do not panic. They adjust. They remain rooted, but flexible. They keep growing. You can do the same. Your peace depends not on others staying the same, but on your ability to remain centered as they change. Their joy may lift you, their pain may move you, but neither should shake you, because your center is not outside you, it is within. Understanding anicca helps you see the difference between reacting and responding. When you react, you grasp at control. When you respond, you accept what is here and choose with clarity. One is fear, the other is awareness. Relationships begin to change in positive ways when you practice this. You become less controlling, less defensive, more present. Others feel safer around you because they are not being judged for every shift in mood or energy. They begin to relax, and in that space, more real connection becomes possible. You may still feel the sting of change, but it does not have to become resentment. You may still grieve what was, but it does not have to become bitterness. You may still miss the version of them who once felt easier to love. But you do not have to trap them there. You can let yourself miss them without making them wrong. You can let your heart feel pain without closing. Impermanence also applies to your own reactions. Today, you may feel angry. Tomorrow, you may feel calm. You do not have to make your feelings permanent either. Just as others shift, so will you. And the more you accept this, the less guilt or shame you carry for not being the same every day. Even your attachments will change. People you could not let go of may one day no longer occupy your mind. People who once shook your peace may one day no longer move you. This is the truth of all things. Everything changes, everything passes, everything softens with time and awareness. Let others be the river. Let their words flow. Let their silences pass. Let their behaviors change without needing to hold them still. Your job is not to control their current. Your job is to remain steady in your own. This does not mean being cold or detached. It means being clear. It means loving people as they are, not as you expect them to be. It means releasing the burden of disappointment by releasing the illusion of permanence. And when you see that even pain is temporary, you do not hold grudges so tightly. When you see that even joy is fleeting, you appreciate it more deeply. When you see that even identity is not fixed, you become more forgiving, more compassionate, more free. Let yourself evolve with life, not against it. Let others do the same. Trust that change does not always mean loss. Sometimes it means growth. Sometimes it means truth. Sometimes it means nothing more than life simply moving forward. You cannot hold back the river. You cannot make people stay the way they were. But you can remain peaceful as they flow. You can stop needing them to stay in one place in order for you to feel whole. As you begin to let others flow like rivers, as you stop holding them to still images from the past, something even deeper becomes visible. The space where their moods once shook you. The space where their changing behaviors used to define your worth. And in that space, you begin to see what was really happening all along. You weren't just observing their behavior. You were absorbing it. You were making it personal. You were taking their emotions and wearing them like your own skin. But what if their projection is not your identity? What if their anger, their blame, their silence, their judgments have nothing to do with you at all? There is a quiet freedom in realizing you are not the mirror that reflects everyone's noise. And the path to that freedom is through a truth that Buddhism has held for over 2,000 years. The truth of anatta, the non-self. This truth cuts deeper than detachment from behavior. It is not just about letting go of what people do. It is about letting go of who you think you are when they do it. Because so often it is not the anger that hurts. It is the belief that it means something about you. It is not the blame that wounds. It is the way you carry it, repeat it, and let it shape your inner world. To live from the insight of non-self is to understand that there is no solid, separate me that needs to hold the weight of every word, every mood, every story others throw in your direction. The self that gets offended, that feels responsible, that internalizes other people's chaos, is not fixed. It is a mental habit, and mental habits can be unlearned. Think of the last time someone accused you of something unfair, or raised their voice, or withdrew in cold silence. What did your mind do? It probably tried to solve it. Maybe you replayed the moment 100 times. Maybe you blamed yourself. Maybe you defended yourself in your thoughts. This reaction is so automatic, so ingrained, that most people never question it. But Buddhism invites you to pause and look closer. When someone projects anger onto you, it says more about their state than yours. Their words may hit you, but their origin is not you. Just because it lands on you does not mean it came from you. Most of what people throw at others is an echo of their own inner struggle. Their fear, shame, and past experiences get pushed out onto the nearest person. Often, that person is you, not because you deserve it, but because you are there. Learning this does not mean you stop feeling. It means you stop attaching your identity to what is not yours. When you understand anatta, you see that what arises in others can stop with them. It does not need to pass through you. It does not need to reshape you. In practical terms, this means not responding to every accusation with guilt, not taking silence as proof of your unworthiness, not letting passive aggression mold your self-image. It means watching the emotional arrow fly toward you and letting it fall, rather than catching it and driving it deeper into your own heart. This takes practice, especially if you were raised to believe that peace comes from keeping others happy. If you learned that your job is to make people comfortable, that if someone is upset, you must have done something wrong. These beliefs create a self that exists only in reaction to others. But that self is not the real you. It is a reflection of everyone else's confusion, polished into your identity. The practice begins with awareness. Notice when someone's words create tension in your body, when blame triggers shame, when anger creates fear. Then pause. Ask yourself, is this mine? Does this belong to me? Did I create it, or am I carrying it? When you stop reacting, the projection has nowhere to land. When you do not accept the guilt, it returns to the sender. When you stop identifying with their view of you, you step out of the story completely. This is not about being indifferent. It is about being clear. You can respond with kindness, but without ownership. You can listen without absorbing. You can care without collapsing. Understanding non-self also means releasing the need to constantly defend yourself. Defensiveness comes from the belief that there is a self to protect, a solid me that needs to be seen as good, right, lovable. But what if there is no fixed self to defend? What if your value does not depend on winning arguments, proving innocence, or correcting false views? Letting go of this need feels like breathing out after years of holding tension in your chest. You are not here to fix everyone's misunderstanding of you. You are not here to control how others see you. You are here to know yourself beyond stories, beyond reflection, beyond reaction. Other people's opinions of you are shaped by their own perceptions, their own wounds, their own projections. What they see is not always what you are. What they judge is often what they fear in themselves. And when you take their projection as truth, you abandon yourself. Living from anatta means stepping out of the mirror, not shattering it, just stepping away. You stop defining yourself based on reflection. You stop chasing identity in others' eyes. You return to the quiet space within, where you are no longer trying to be someone for anyone. You begin to see that your worth does not change because someone forgot to call, that your peace is not dependent on someone else's tone, that your clarity does not vanish because someone dumped their confusion on you. You become like a clear sky. Thoughts come, emotions pass, projections land and dissolve, but you remain unchanged, not hardened, just unmoved by what does not belong to you. There is deep compassion in this clarity, because once you stop taking things personally, you can see more clearly what others are going through. You realize their anger is pain, their blame is fear, their coldness is protection. You do not have to accept these things, but you also do not have to become them. Anatta frees you not by taking away your humanity, but by showing that your humanity is not a performance. You do not have to constantly reflect the world's chaos. You can sit in your own presence, quietly rooted in something deeper than identity. This also helps in healing old wounds. Think of the voices that still echo in your mind, the ones that told you that you were not enough, that you were too much, that you were the problem. These voices were never yours. They were projections, carried into your mind before you had the tools to question them, but now you do. Now you can look at each one and say, "This is not mine. I am not the reflection of someone else's pain." This is not a denial of responsibility. It is a refusal to carry what was never yours. When you make a mistake, own it fully. But when someone blames you for their own storm, walk away with grace. That is not yours to fix. That is not yours to carry. In silence, begin to let go of every story someone else placed on you, every label, every role, every false identity. Watch them fall like leaves from a tree. The tree does not mourn the leaf. It simply lets go when it is time. There is strength in not needing to hold what is not real. There is power in walking through life without constantly adjusting yourself for others' comfort. There is peace in no longer being the mirror. This freedom allows for more presence. You begin to listen without absorbing, speak without defending, connect without losing yourself. You are no longer the container for everyone else's emotional overflow. You are the one who holds space, not the one who holds weight. As this insight deepens, even your self-image begins to soften. You stop clinging to being seen as good, strong, kind, or wise. You just are. And in that being, there is so much more peace than in the endless effort of maintaining an identity. You begin to see through the illusion of self as something fixed and solid. What you are is not a frozen reflection. It is an open space of awareness where experiences arise and pass, where emotions flow, where thoughts move, where nothing sticks unless you grasp it. Let others have their stories. Let them project. Let them assume. You do not need to chase every misunderstanding. You do not need to polish the mirror. You can rest in the space that needs no reflection to know its own clarity. You are not what others feel about you. You are not what they expect of you. You are not the container for their blame or anger or praise. You are not the role they want you to play. You are awareness, empty of self, full of presence, free from reflection. Once you stop being the mirror for other people's projections, you start to hear something rare, something quiet, something that was always there beneath the noise. It is the sound of your own presence, free from defense, free from performance, free from the endless need to respond. This is where silence enters, not the silence of absence or avoidance, but a living, intelligent stillness, a space that no longer bends for the world's chaos, a space where your dignity and peace are protected not by more words, but by fewer. This is noble silence, not an escape, not a wall, but a refuge built by awareness. There is a silence that isolates, and there is a silence that liberates. In Buddhism, the second is known as Ariya Tunhi Bhava. It is not about shutting out the world. It is about choosing not to drown in it. Noble silence is not a punishment for others. It is a gift to yourself, a sacred decision to return to clarity when words no longer serve, when arguments tangle, when emotions boil, when presence begins to shake. It is the doorway back into yourself. Most people think silence means defeat. If you do not reply, they believe you are weak. If you do not defend, they think you are admitting guilt. But noble silence has nothing to do with winning. It has everything to do with preserving the inner space where your clarity lives. It is a vow to no longer leak energy in places where it is not honored. Not all conversations are equal. Some are grounded. Others are battles dressed as dialogues. If you keep speaking into confusion, you become confused. If you keep answering provocation, you become provoked. But when you sit in noble silence, you break the loop. You show that your presence is not for sale to every storm. This kind of silence is not cold. It is compassionate. It does not mean shutting people out. It means keeping yourself intact. When you speak, only when your words arise from awareness, your voice becomes clearer, more powerful. But when you speak to fill space or defend ego, your voice becomes scattered. Silence returns the power to your presence. There is a time for communication, and there is a time for restraint. Noble silence is not the absence of wisdom. It is wisdom deciding to pause. It is not a lack of care. It is care knowing that not all care is expressed through words. It is knowing when to let the moment breathe without inserting noise. In daily life, this might look like stepping away from a heated conversation rather than feeding it. It might mean listening deeply without planning your next reply. It might mean withholding your opinion when you realize it will not bring clarity, only friction. It might mean sitting in a room full of chaos and becoming the stillness that changes the atmosphere without saying a single word. True silence is not awkward, it is awake. It sees clearly what is happening without needing to interrupt it. It feels deeply without spilling everywhere. It notices the rise of emotion, the pull to speak, and then it waits. It watches. It lets the storm pass. Noble silence also rebuilds self-respect. When you choose not to explain your worth, you begin to feel it more deeply. When you stop justifying your peace, you become more peaceful. Every time you say less but mean more, your presence strengthens. The people who once pulled you into chaos begin to feel the difference. They may not understand it, but they will feel it. You are no longer reactive. You are no longer predictable. You are no longer part of the script. This silence also sets boundaries without aggression. It says, I will not enter this noise. I will not become part of this confusion. I will not answer anger with anger. I will not feed what drains me. This is not a silence that walks away from truth. It walks toward it. Many people fear silence because they believe it creates distance, but often it is noise that causes the real separation. Words spoken without mindfulness, arguments repeated without resolution, defenses built from pain, not clarity. Noble silence cuts through all of it. It brings you closer to what is real by removing what is unnecessary. In Buddhist monastic practice, silence is not just a technique, it is a way of life. Monks often observe long periods of silence to deepen their awareness, not to isolate from others, but to return to their own center. In that silence, they learn how much energy is wasted on words that do not need to be said, how much clarity is lost in trying to be understood, how much peace is found in not reacting. You do not have to be a monk to practice this. You can bring noble silence into your daily life, even for a few minutes. Before speaking, pause. Ask yourself, does this bring clarity? Does this bring peace? Does this need to be said? If the answer is no, return to silence. This practice also protects you from manipulation. When someone is trying to provoke you, Your silence becomes a wall they cannot climb. When they demand a reaction and receive none, the game ends. When they expect drama and you give stillness, something shifts. Not just in them, but in you. You no longer play roles. You no longer prove anything. You just remain. In silence, you begin to hear your own mind more clearly. The thoughts that rush, the emotions that surge, the habits that grip. You see all of it without having to speak it, and in that seeing, you start to unwind from patterns that words alone could never break. Silence also deepens your intuition. When the noise falls away, something subtler arises. You begin to sense what is true, what is right, what is needed. You respond from a quieter knowing, not from social habit. This makes your actions more deliberate, your relationships more honest, your energy more grounded. You begin to notice that not all silence is equal. There is silence born from fear, and there is silence born from wisdom. One hides, the other reveals. One contracts, the other expands. Noble silence is the second kind. It is not running away. It is standing still in the middle of everything and saying, I choose not to move with this storm. This choice also begins to heal emotional exhaustion. When you stop engaging with every conflict, every provocation, every invitation to explain yourself, your nervous system starts to reset. You become less anxious, less drained, less reactive. The silence is not empty. It is full of healing. In time, you may find that some people become uncomfortable with your silence. They may accuse you of being distant, withholding, or cold. That is okay. Their discomfort is not your responsibility. Let them adjust to your new rhythm. Let them feel the difference between who you were when you over-explained and who you are when you rest in clarity. Not every situation requires your input. Not every moment needs your opinion. Not every conversation needs your reply. Sometimes the most powerful presence in the room is the one who says nothing and still shifts the entire tone by simply being grounded. This is not suppression. It is strength. This is not passive. It is deeply engaged with the truth. Noble silence is a space where wisdom gets to breathe, where emotions get to cool, where the mind gets to see clearly without being rushed. It is a silence that listens to what is under the words, a silence that sees the pain behind the noise, a silence that holds both firmness and kindness, a silence that honors your dignity without diminishing anyone else's. You begin to understand that speaking less does not mean caring less. It means caring with more discernment. You no longer leak truth just because there is pressure. You no longer reveal your center to those who will not honor it. You become more selective, not from ego, but from awareness. This silence also teaches humility. Sometimes you do not have the right words. Sometimes the best response is no response. Sometimes your presence is more powerful than your explanation. And in those moments, silence is not weakness. It is maturity. You do not owe everyone access to your energy. You do not owe every question an answer. You do not owe every attack a counterattack. Silence gives you a way to honor your truth without stepping into chaos. With time, this practice becomes second nature. You find yourself less pulled into drama, less disturbed by criticism, less eager to correct. You start to feel that your silence is not a retreat, but a return to the part of you that sees clearly, that loves deeply, that acts wisely. And when you do speak, your words carry more weight, because they are not coming from impulse, they are coming from reflection, from stillness, from truth. Let your silence become a home. Let it be the place you return to when the world gets loud. Let it be your shield when others try to pull you into their confusion. Let it be your teacher when the mind wants to rush. Let it be your offering when nothing else will do. You do not have to explain your peace. You do not have to narrate your growth. You do not have to decorate your presence with words. Let your stillness speak for you. The more you rest in noble silence, the more clearly you see the patterns that once ruled you. Without the noise, the distractions, or the pull to explain, the mind begins to reveal its deeper cravings. And one of the strongest cravings of all is the quiet, persistent urge to change someone, to correct them, to help them evolve, to push them toward the version of themselves you believe they should be. But this craving, no matter how noble it looks, is a trap. Because the desire to change others is not freedom, it is tanha, the root of suffering, the subtle chain that binds you to someone else's karma. There is a certain heartbreak in watching someone stay stuck. You see their patterns clearly. You see how they sabotage themselves, how they repeat their pain, how they push away the very things that could heal them. And if you care about them, this can become unbearable. You want to intervene, to wake them up, to say the one thing that finally gets through. But the moment this craving takes hold, your peace starts to slip away. In Buddhist teachings, tanha is not just desire. It is grasping. It is the hunger to control what is not yours, and craving another person's growth is a form of this hunger. It seems kind. It looks like compassion, but it is still clinging, still resistance, still a refusal to let the moment and the person be as they are. When you crave someone's transformation, you are trying to escape your own discomfort with their current state. Their confusion unsettles you. Their choices frustrate you. Their stagnation makes you feel powerless. And instead of sitting with that discomfort, you turn it into a mission. If only they would change, I could feel peace again. But their path is not your project. Their karma is not your responsibility. Their awakening, if it comes, will not be because you forced it. It will come because they were ready, because their own suffering ripened into insight, because life gave them the exact lesson they needed at the right time, not when you thought they should receive it. Trying to rush someone else's growth is not wisdom. It is impatience dressed in spiritual language. It says, I know better, I know what you need. But what if you are wrong? What if your vision of their healing is still shaped by your own attachments? What if the person they need to become is not the version you want them to be? Letting go of this craving does not mean abandoning people. It means respecting them. It means seeing them clearly, not as broken beings who need your fixing, but as sovereign souls walking their own path. You can offer love. You can share insight. But the moment you attach to their outcome, you lose your center. This craving also creates a deep imbalance. When your peace depends on someone else's behavior, your life becomes a waiting room. You postpone your joy. You hold back your own freedom until they meet your conditions. But they may never meet them, and even if they do, it might not last. People shift. Growth is not linear. Change comes in its own way, on its own schedule. If your inner calm rises and falls with someone else's progress, that is not compassion. That is codependence. It is a sign that your mind has fused your liberation with theirs, that your well-being has been tied to their evolution. But Buddhism teaches you to cut that thread, to return your attention to where it belongs, your own practice, your own karma, your own awakening. Every moment spent analyzing their behavior is a moment taken from your own clarity. Every strategy to convince them is energy diverted from your own presence. Every conversation designed to nudge them forward is a quiet form of control, and control always leads to suffering. There is a freedom that comes when you stop trying to change people, when you finally accept that their growth is not your job, that their resistance is not your failure, that their journey is sacred, even if it looks messy or slow. This does not mean you become passive. It means you become wise enough to step back when your help is no longer helpful, wise enough to remain silent when your advice has turned into pressure, wise enough to see that pushing harder often causes people to dig in deeper. People do not transform because of pressure. They transform because of insight, and insight cannot be forced. It cannot be handed over like a gift. It must rise from within. You cannot open someone else's eyes. You can only stay awake in your own body, your own heart, your own breath. When you release this craving, something powerful happens. You become lighter, more spacious, more compassionate. You no longer need others to become something different in order to love them. You no longer wait for them to change before you relax. You stop trying to earn peace through someone else's improvement. This opens the door to real compassion. Not the compassion that demands results, but the compassion that holds presence. You are no longer measuring their worth through their growth. You are no longer measuring your love through their progress. You are just there, available, clear, unentangled. Letting go of the craving also softens your inner world. It turns your attention back to the places in you that still seek control, still fear loss, still want certainty. These places need your care, not your distraction, not your projection, but your direct, steady presence. Every time you feel the urge to fix someone, pause. Notice the sensation in your body, the tension, the urgency, the story. Then ask, what am I really feeling right now? Is it sadness, powerlessness, fear? Often the craving is not about them at all. It is about the part of you that wants to feel useful, or loved, or safe. These are your work. These are your teachings. Let their path be their teacher. Let your own reactions be yours. Do not trade your liberation for the illusion of control. Do not chain yourself to someone else's karma, thinking that if you suffer beside them long enough, it will bring them closer to freedom. That is not how awakening works. Not in Buddhism, not in life. Freedom comes when you stay with your own experience, when you honor your limits, when you listen more than you correct, when you accept what is true instead of chasing what could be. You can still love people deeply, you can still offer support, but without attachment, without grasping, without needing their change to validate your care. This kind of love is not passive. It is powerful. It says, I see you as you are, and I hold you in my heart. Whether you change or not is your path. I will not make your journey my burden. When you live like this, relationships become lighter. Expectations soften. Pressure fades. You stop being the guide for someone who never asked for directions. You stop being the architect of someone else's evolution. You begin to trust something larger. Trust that life will give each person what they need, that suffering itself will become their teacher, that the lessons will come even if they arrive through struggle. And you return to your own path. You use the energy once spent on others to deepen your own peace. You bring attention back to your breath, your steps, your habits of mind. You stop outsourcing meaning to someone else's growth. This is not giving up. It is letting go of force. Letting go of the fantasy that if you just say it the right way, they will wake up. That if you just love them enough, they will soften. That if you just hold on tighter, they will finally rise. This craving is subtle. It dresses up as hope, as patience, as loyalty. But hope without acceptance becomes suffering. Patience without boundaries becomes exhaustion. Loyalty without clarity becomes bondage. You were not born to carry other people across rivers they refuse to cross. You were born to walk your own path with courage and awareness. And in doing so, you become the example, not the rescuer. Let others change when they are ready. Let their karma ripen in its own time. Let the craving dissolve. Let the pressure fall away. Come back to the simplicity of this moment. Come back to your own breath. Come back to what you can truly influence, your mind, your choices, your presence. In this space, peace returns. Not because the world changed, not because others improved, but because you stopped demanding that they do. You released the craving, you untied the knot, you let their karma be theirs, and in doing so, you reclaimed your own. Letting go of the craving to change others returns you to a deeper truth. That your freedom was never on the other side of someone else's transformation. It was always within your own understanding. And yet, life continues to place certain people in your path. People who trigger you, confuse you, challenge your limits. People who do not fit into the calm inner space you are building. The question is no longer how to fix them. The question now becomes how to see them. What are they showing you about yourself, about the nature of reality, about the path? This is where right view begins, and with it, a powerful shift, seeing difficult people not as enemies, but as karmic teachers. There is no avoiding the fact that some people make life harder. Their words sting, their choices hurt, their presence feels like friction. You may feel tempted to distance yourself, to cut ties, to erase their imprint from your life entirely. Sometimes that is the wise choice, but other times they stay. Not by your decision, but by circumstance. A family member, a co-worker, a neighbor, a partner's friend. And each time you interact with them, something stirs inside you. Anger, frustration, sadness, or a strange combination of all three. This is where Buddhism offers something different. Instead of seeing these people as roadblocks, you begin to see them as reflections, not of who you are, but of what still reacts in you, what still attaches, what still craves. They are not here to harm you. They are showing you where the work still lives. Right view is one of the first steps on the Eightfold Path. It is the understanding that suffering has causes, that nothing happens randomly, that the people who cross your path do so not by accident, but by karmic unfolding. This does not mean you deserve mistreatment. It means that every encounter has the potential to teach, but only if you see it clearly. Seeing clearly begins with letting go of blame. When someone hurts you, it is natural to fixate on their actions, but this keeps your attention outward. Right view turns your attention inward, not to judge yourself, but to observe. What was triggered in me? What expectation was disappointed? What attachment was challenged? This inquiry does not justify their behavior. It simply brings the power back to your hands. You stop waiting for them to apologize before you begin healing. You stop needing them to change before you find peace. You use the moment itself as a mirror for growth. Every time someone disrespects you, you have a choice. You can react from habit, or you can respond from awareness. You can reinforce the same pain loop, or you can break it. This is what karmic teaching means. Not that people are put in your life to hurt you, but that their presence offers the exact pressure needed to reveal what remains unexamined. You may find that the most difficult person in your life is the one who teaches you patience. Not by giving it to you, but by forcing you to find it within yourself. You may discover that someone's betrayal opened the door to deep self-respect, that their absence became the space where your solitude grew strong, that their judgment led you to stop seeking approval and start living in truth. None of this requires you to praise suffering. Buddhism never asks you to celebrate pain. It asks you to see pain as a teacher, not the only teacher, but a powerful one. And like any teacher, it becomes valuable only when you listen with humility. Right view also helps you avoid the trap of romanticizing your suffering. You do not have to stay in toxic relationships just to prove you are evolving. Wisdom includes knowing when to step back, when to walk away, when to protect your peace. But even in walking away, the lesson remains. You can leave someone's presence without leaving behind the insight their behavior awakened. The mind often wants to label people: good, bad, friend, enemy. But these labels harden perception. They turn living beings into concepts. Right view softens that. It allows for complexity. It says, this person may be unkind, but their presence is still showing me something I need to see. Not because they are right, but because their energy is revealing something unhealed in me. This does not mean accepting abuse. It means learning from exposure. You do not have to let someone back into your life to receive the teaching. You only need to stop rejecting the lesson, to meet it without resistance, to say, this too is part of the path. When you view someone as your karmic teacher, your inner posture shifts. You stop feeling like a victim. You start feeling like a student, not a student of their behavior, but of your own reactions, your own emotions, your own mind. This mindset builds resilience. Because difficult people no longer destabilize you, they become part of your training. They teach you how to stay grounded in discomfort, how to remain kind without collapsing, how to speak truth without needing to be heard. You also begin to realize how often your own projections shape your view of others. The person who triggers you may remind you of someone else. The emotion they stir may belong to an earlier wound. When you do not see this, you repeat the past. But with right view, you catch it. You step out of the projection and into presence. This creates space. Space to respond instead of react. Space to ask deeper questions. Space to remember that the person in front of you is also shaped by karma, by causes and conditions you may never see. Their behavior may be harmful, but it did not come from nowhere. This awareness is not for their sake. It is for yours, to help you stop personalizing what was never personal. Right view also means seeing difficult people as impermanent. They too will change. They too are evolving, just like you. They may not change in the ways you want or on your timeline, but they are not fixed. No one is. Holding on to your resentment keeps you frozen in a version of them that may no longer be true. Letting go allows both of you to grow. This does not mean letting go of boundaries. It means letting go of illusions. The illusion that they are only what they did. The illusion that they are the cause of your suffering. The illusion that your freedom is blocked by their presence. Your freedom is blocked only by resistance, the belief that things should be different, the refusal to accept what is. When you drop that, you return to your own path. You stop orbiting around their behavior. You start walking forward again. This is not easy. It takes practice. It takes courage. It takes humility. But with time, it becomes natural. You begin to see everyone as part of your learning, not because they are wise, but because life itself is always teaching, and you are always capable of learning. Even the most painful relationships can contain gold, not in the pain itself, but in what you uncover through it. Strength, patience, insight, boundaries, truth. These are not given to you by others. They are awakened in you by what others cannot give. Right view gives you a new lens, a wider context, a deeper peace. Because you stop needing people to be easy in order to feel okay. You stop running from discomfort. You start using it. You may still feel pain, but pain is not the problem. The problem is the story that says pain should not exist, that people should be different, that the path should be smooth. Buddhism never promises a smooth path. It promises a clear one. And clarity comes not from avoiding difficulty, but from transforming your relationship to it. Let difficult people become mirrors. Let their behavior teach you where you still attach. Let their energy show you where you still react. Let their presence become your practice, not because they are right, not because they are wise, but because they are human, and because so are you. Seeing difficult people as karmic teachers loosens the grip of resentment. It replaces resistance with understanding and softens anger with clarity. But even with this insight, the heart can still feel heavy. The memories linger. The tension stays in the body. There is still something left inside that wants release, not through logic, but through warmth. This is where metta comes in, the practice of loving kindness. But not the kind tied to approval, not the kind that waits for change or recognition. This is loving kindness without invitation, an offering that asks for nothing in return, a power that frees the heart by expecting no payment. Most people associate love with connection, with closeness, with mutual understanding. But in the Buddhist path, love is not something you give because someone earned it. It is something you offer because it liberates you to do so. Metta is the intention for others to be well, safe, and free from suffering. It is not an emotional performance. It is a mental training, a discipline that untangles the mind from bitterness by cultivating goodwill. This may seem strange when directed towards someone who hurt you. The mind resists. It says they don't deserve it. It clings to old wounds, old stories, old debts. But metta does not mean approving of their behavior. It means you are no longer willing to carry the burden of hatred. You are no longer interested in poisoning your own mind just to punish theirs. Metta frees you from emotional bookkeeping, from tracking who hurt you, who owes you, who should have done better. It cuts those cords not through forgetfulness, but through strength. The practice itself is simple but profound. You sit quietly. You bring someone to mind. You repeat phrases like, "May you be happy. May you be peaceful. May you be safe." At first, these words may feel empty, but over time, they begin to soften the grip of judgment. They begin to warm the places in your heart that became cold from disappointment. Not because the other person changes, but because your view of them changes. You stop defining them by your pain. You start relating to their humanity, even if only in silence. This shift is not weakness, it is power. Because you are no longer asking others to repay an emotional debt. You are no longer waiting for closure. You are no longer trying to collect on a balance that may never be paid. That freedom is priceless. It gives you back your energy. It returns your attention to the present. One of the traps in relationships is that we love in order to receive. We give in order to feel seen. We forgive to be thanked. But this creates subtle tension. When the expected outcome does not come, frustration arises. You start to resent your own kindness. You feel used. But with metta, the giving is clean. It has no strings. It does not need to land. It is like sunlight. It shines because that is its nature. Whether the other person receives it or not is secondary. This kind of love is not emotional dependence. It is emotional independence. You are not looking to be loved back. You are not trying to fix anything. You are simply letting go of hatred, not because they deserve peace, but because you do. This does not mean you should force yourself to feel warmth right away. That would be dishonest. If there is anger, acknowledge it. If there is grief, feel it. Metta does not replace your real feelings. It holds them with care. It says, even now, with all this pain, I can wish you peace. Even if I never speak to you again, even if I never forget what happened, even if you never change, still, I release you from my grip. Practicing this regularly changes the way your mind reacts. When old memories arise, you greet them with kindness instead of tension. When people trigger you, you feel the urge to send warmth instead of judgment. This does not happen overnight. It takes time. But each time you practice, you plant a new seed in the mind. Eventually, this practice expands. You start offering loving kindness to people you barely know, to strangers, to those who annoy you, even to those who would never return the gesture. The heart becomes vast, no longer confined to likes and dislikes, no longer controlled by history. It becomes a space of offering. You might worry that this makes you vulnerable, that letting go of anger removes your protection. But metta does not make you naive. It makes you clear. You still set boundaries. You still walk away from harmful situations. But you do so without bitterness, without malice. You no longer need to carry the flame of anger to light your way. Clarity is enough. This kind of strength often goes unnoticed. People see silence, not the storm that was avoided. They see calm, not the discipline it took to stop the spiral. But within, you know the difference. You know what it means to love without needing anything back. You feel the space that opens up when your love is not tied to outcomes. And this is where true freedom begins, because the mind that loves freely cannot be manipulated. It cannot be baited into emotional traps. It cannot be shaken by rejection. It becomes steady, rooted in its own clarity, in its own intention. Metta also helps with self-forgiveness. As you send love outward, you begin to feel where it has been missing inward. You notice how hard you have been on yourself, how tightly you have held your own mistakes. So you turn the phrases inward. May I be safe. May I be peaceful. May I be free from suffering. This does not make you self-centered. It makes you whole. Because a heart that does not include itself in kindness will always seek approval from others. It will chase affection. It will trade love for safety. But a heart that has met itself in tenderness stops searching. It simply gives. Loving kindness without invitation also helps break cycles. You stop reacting to negativity with more negativity. You stop answering cruelty with coldness. You begin to return to your own nature, not to the behavior of others. And this constancy becomes a quiet revolution, a way of being that does not depend on who walks into your life or what they bring. This practice does not mean you deny pain. It means you relate to pain differently. You stop fueling it with stories. You stop making it your identity. You feel it. You breathe with it. You soften around it. And then you release it, not by force, but by kindness. Metta is also a path of trust. Trust that your heart knows how to heal. Trust that love is not weakness. Trust that your peace does not come from how others behave, but from how you respond. This does not mean you forget what happened. It means you stop using it as a reason to stay stuck. You remember, but with space. You carry the memory, but not the bitterness. You honor your past, but do not become it. Each time you sit in this practice, you are saying to yourself, I choose peace, not later. Now. I choose not to let the world harden me. I choose not to repay harm with harm. I choose to remain whole. This is not always easy. There will be days when the phrases feel empty, when your mind resists, when your heart feels closed. But keep going. Sit anyway. Speak the words. Let them echo in the silence. Even if they do not land today, they are shaping the ground for tomorrow. Eventually, you will feel it. The quiet warmth, the small shift, the loosening of something old. And you will know that metta is not just a practice. It is a way of being, a way of relating, a way of letting go. Love without needing, kindness without condition, presence without expectation. Letting love flow without needing it to return is a kind of quiet power, a freedom that comes not from the world being kind to you, but from you choosing to remain kind anyway. It opens space in the heart. It clears old weights from the mind. But sometimes, even as you offer love, there is still something trying to hold on. A subtle voice inside that says, if I care enough, maybe they'll change. If I stay soft, maybe they'll stop hurting themselves. If I keep showing up, maybe they won't fall apart. And that is when the boundary becomes blurry again. That is when you begin to carry what was never yours to carry, to absorb what life has placed in someone else's hands. But karma does not belong to you. It belongs to them. And until you release that weight, peace will remain out of reach. There is a kind of suffering that doesn't come from pain itself, but from confusing whose pain it is. You see someone making choices that harm themselves, or others, or even you, and you step in, not out of control, but out of care. You try to soften the fall. You offer advice. You clean up the mess. You manage their emotions. At first, it seems like love. It feels noble. But over time, it begins to wear you down, because the weight was never yours to hold. Buddhism teaches the law of karma not as punishment, but as cause and effect. Every action brings a consequence. Every intention plants a seed, and those seeds grow not when you decide, but when the conditions are ripe. Trying to interrupt someone else's karmic unfolding does not stop their suffering. It only delays the lesson. When you take ownership of another person's behavior, you block both your own path and theirs. You start living reactively. You filter your peace through their decisions. You begin to believe that if you had just said something better, or helped more, or stayed longer, things would have turned out differently. But that is an illusion, because no one can walk a path for someone else. No one can digest a lesson that wasn't theirs to live. Even your love cannot erase karma. Even your presence cannot undo someone else's refusal to change. And when you try to carry their burden for them, you are not protecting them. You are protecting yourself from feeling helpless. But helplessness is not weakness. It is the first step toward humility, toward understanding that your job was never to fix them. Your job was to love clearly, to act wisely, and to let go completely. You may think, if I let go, they will fall. And that might be true. But maybe falling is part of their path. Maybe the bottom they are heading toward is the only place where insight will crack open. And if you keep cushioning their fall, they will never feel the ground. They will never meet their own consequences. They will never face the mirror that karma is always trying to hold up. This does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop interfering. It means you respect their journey enough to let them face the results of their actions, to let the lesson come through the pain, not despite it. This also means letting go of guilt. The guilt that says you should have done more. The guilt that whispers you abandoned them. The guilt that grows from stories, not truth. Because truth says this: everyone walks their own path. Everyone bears their own karma. Everyone learns when they are ready, not when you are tired of waiting. You may still feel the pull to step in, especially when the person is someone close to you. A sibling, a parent, a partner. But the most loving thing you can do is often the hardest. To step back, to witness, to remain clear and kind without becoming tangled. Taking on someone else's karma never heals them. It only exhausts you. It distorts the roles. It builds resentment, and resentment poisons the very love you were trying to protect. Letting go of ownership also means letting go of identity. the identity of the helper, the one who always holds it together, the one who absorbs everyone's pain. That identity may have kept you safe once. It may have made you feel useful. But now, it keeps you stuck. And it keeps them stuck too. Release the need to be the answer. Release the belief that your strength should make up for their weakness. Release the idea that love means carrying what was never placed in your hands. When you stop absorbing their choices, your energy returns to you. You have more clarity, more presence, more peace. You begin to feel the difference between compassion and codependence, between presence and possession, between helping and rescuing. And the most surprising part is this: when you release their karma, they are more likely to grow. Because they finally feel the weight of their own choices. They no longer have you as a shield. They no longer have your energy to borrow. They meet themselves fully. And that meeting is where real transformation begins. You can still be kind. You can still be near. But now, you are not tangled. You are not confused. You know where you end and they begin. If they are angry, let them be. If they are silent, let them be. If they spiral, let them spiral. You stay grounded. You stay clear. You stay in your own lane. This is not coldness. It is respect. Respect for yourself. Respect for truth. Respect for the deep intelligence of karma that knows how to teach what you cannot. It is easy to believe that stepping back means giving up, but stepping back is sometimes the only way to honor both lives. Because what looks like distance from the outside is often deep alignment on the inside. You are not here to keep people from their own awakening. You are not here to rewrite their journey. You are here to walk your own with integrity. Let them feel their pain. Let them confront their patterns. Let them grow without your hands holding their branches up. This also means releasing hope as a form of control. Hoping they will see. Hoping they will return. Hoping they will apologize. This kind of hope is a chain. It keeps your mind in the future. It keeps your heart on pause. Let it go. Let what comes, come. Let what goes, go. Karma is not punishment. It is learning. And everyone is given the lessons they need. Even if those lessons look harsh, even if those lessons arrive through heartbreak, even if those lessons take years. Your job is not to deliver the lessons. Your job is to stay awake in your own life, to notice where you still want to fix, absorb, control, to bow to the part of you that wants to protect, and then to gently tell it, not this time. This time we let life teach. This time we stay in our own experience. This time we release the burden. This does not mean indifference. It means deeper love. A love that trusts life more than it trusts your strategies. A love that does not need to interfere to care. Let your energy return to you. Let your focus return to what you can influence. Your mind, your speech, your presence. Let your heart soften without clinging. Let their karma be theirs. And if the day comes when they awaken, let it be on their own terms. Let it be their own realization. And if it never comes, let that be okay too. Because you did not abandon them. You honored them. You gave them the dignity to learn without your shadow over their path. Let the past unravel. Let the burden fall. Let karma do what karma always does, teach. Releasing the weight of someone else's karma brings a level of peace that is both quiet and bold. Quiet because it no longer seeks to fix or prove. Bold because it takes strength to let life teach in its own time. But even after stepping back, there is still one more layer to confront. The pull to respond. The urge to defend. The instinct to explain, argue, or correct when conflict arises. Sometimes you do not carry their karma, but you still get caught in their storm. That's where the deeper training begins. To not just step back externally, but to step back internally. This is the art of non-engagement, the discipline of remaining inwardly unmoved, even as chaos swirls around you. Non-engagement does not mean indifference or passivity. It means refusing to become emotionally entangled in other people's reactivity. It means learning how to witness drama without feeding it. Not by ignoring it, but by anchoring your awareness so deeply in the present moment that you no longer take the bait. This practice is rooted in Satipatthana, the 4 foundations of mindfulness: body, feeling, mind, mental phenomena. These become your anchors, your refuge, and your filter for action. It starts with the body. When conflict arises, your first reaction is not mental. It is physical. The heart rate speeds up, the breath shortens, the stomach tightens. Before any word is spoken, the nervous system is already bracing. If you are not aware of this, your body becomes the stage for the drama. But if you are trained in mindfulness, you catch it. You feel the rise, you notice the grip, and you breathe. You stay with the sensation rather than the story. This is how you pause the cycle before it begins. Then come the feelings, the raw, unfiltered sensations that do not yet have names. Heat, tightness, pressure. If you stay with these, they pass. But if you name them too quickly, anger, insult, betrayal, you are already inside the story. Non-engagement is the ability to stay with the bare feeling without building a narrative around it. You allow it to rise and fall like a wave without jumping into the water. Next is the mind. This is where the stories form. He always does this. She never listens. Why do they treat me this way? The mind begins collecting evidence to justify your reaction. It gathers past moments. It builds a case. But you have a choice. You can indulge the story, or you can return to observation. Watch the thought. Label it as thinking. Let it pass like a cloud across the sky. It does not need your energy to keep moving. Finally, the mental phenomena. These are the patterns, the habits, the inner reactions that have been conditioned over time. You notice the part of you that always wants the last word, the part that takes silence as an insult, the part that fears being misunderstood. Each time these arise, you bow to them internally, not in submission, but in recognition. You see them clearly, and that seeing is enough. You do not follow, you simply observe. The power of this practice is that it breaks the momentum of emotional reaction. It stops the chain at its root. You do not need to correct every false statement. You do not need to defend every opinion. You do not need to engage just because someone invites you into their chaos. You begin to see that silence is not absence. It is presence with restraint. Non-engagement is not silence out of fear. It is silence from clarity, a deep inner stillness that is not shaken by every wave. And from this stillness, you respond only when a response is skillful, when it will bring light instead of heat, when it is grounded rather than impulsive. There is a myth that strength means always having a response. But in the Buddhist path, true strength is measured by restraint, by the ability to hold your ground without needing to react, by the ability to walk through fire and not become the fire. Sometimes the mind will scream for engagement. It will demand justice, acknowledgement, validation. But you must ask, what does this cost me? Is my peace worth this reaction? Will this reply bring clarity or just more entanglement? When you live from non-engagement, people begin to notice, not always consciously, but energetically. They feel that their hooks no longer land, their bait no longer catches, their arguments no longer stir you, and slowly they stop trying. Or they escalate. But either way, your response stays the same. Not out of stubbornness, but because you are no longer playing the same game. This does not mean you never speak. It means you speak with precision, with care, with timing. Your words are not reactions. They are responses born from awareness. You speak not to defend, but to clarify, not to win, but to end confusion. And sometimes the most clarifying response is no response at all. Non-engagement also protects your energy. Emotional entanglement drains your clarity, your creativity, your joy. Every argument you do not enter is energy preserved. Every insult you do not absorb is space saved. Every drama you do not feed is peace extended. There is power in being the one who does not react. It is not about superiority, it is about stability. About no longer letting others determine the quality of your presence. You set the tone. You decide where your attention goes. You do not give that power away. This practice deepens with time. At first, it may feel like suppression, but it is not. Suppression hides emotion. Non-engagement sees it fully and chooses not to act on it. The difference is awareness. One avoids, the other understands. You begin to learn your triggers, the phrases that hook you, the tones that spark defensiveness, the silences that feel like rejection. And in seeing them, they lose their power. They become familiar guests, not feared intruders. With mindfulness, even the most triggering moments become opportunities. You no longer fear the conflict, you study it. You use it to see where you still grasp, where you still crave control, where you still seek validation, and in that study, you grow. This is not a cold practice. It is rooted in warmth, in compassion. You can still care deeply about people and choose not to engage in their reactivity. You can still hold space without absorbing pain. You can still be present without being pulled. This way of living also makes room for others to grow. When you stop reacting, others are left with their own echo. They are forced to face their own words, their own energy, their own patterns. Your silence becomes a mirror, not to shame them, but to invite them to awareness. And if they do not change, you still have your peace, because your path is no longer tied to their behavior. You are free, not because the world is quiet, but because you are. Non-engagement is not disconnection. It is deeper connection with truth, with what is actually happening inside, with what is worth saying and what is better left unsaid. You do not need to fix every misunderstanding. You do not need to clean up every mess. You do not need to make everyone feel okay with your boundaries. That is not your work. Your work is presence, clarity, alignment. From this space, your whole life begins to shift. Relationships become lighter. Communication becomes cleaner. The mind becomes clearer. Because you are no longer spread thin by constant reaction. You are rooted. This is the fruit of non-engagement. A life no longer dictated by external noise. A heart that responds with wisdom, not habit. A mind that observes instead of absorbs. This practice is not about becoming untouchable. It is about becoming whole. About no longer leaving pieces of yourself scattered in every argument. About no longer sacrificing your center for the illusion of control. Let the storm rage. Let the words fly. Let the old patterns try to hook you. You stay seated in your breath, in your body, in your knowing. This is not retreat. This is return to what is true, to what is stable, to what cannot be shaken. Staying grounded in non-engagement gives your nervous system a rest it may have never known. No longer reacting to chaos, no longer absorbing others' emotions, you begin to notice something else. A quiet invitation rising from within. A pull not toward others, but inward. Not toward more conversations, but toward stillness. It's a call to return to your own space, not as escape, but as restoration. A return to the place that has been whispering all along. Solitude is not loneliness, it is sanctuary. And when embraced with mindfulness, it becomes the strongest form of protection your spirit can hold. This is the beginning of finding your inner monk. Spending time alone is often misunderstood in a world that praises connection and constant interaction. Solitude is seen as something to be escaped or filled. People fear silence, not because it is harmful, but because it reveals what distraction hides. Yet, in Buddhism, solitude is a source of wisdom. Not just physical solitude, but internal separation from noise, dependency, and the constant need for feedback. This space is where your self-respect begins to repair itself. Solitude offers something few relationships can. It holds up a mirror that doesn't flatter, lie, or demand. It shows you your patterns. It reveals the parts of you that are still waiting for permission. It makes you face your cravings, your fears, your attachments. And when these arise, there is no one to blame, no one to impress, no one to soothe you with distractions. It is just you and the truth. At first, this may feel uncomfortable, even threatening, because solitude strips away the masks you wear for others. But what begins as discomfort becomes healing. The more time you spend alone with awareness, the less afraid you are of being alone. The less you fear missing out, the less you need validation, because you begin to see that all the nourishment you were seeking from others lives inside you. This is not about becoming isolated. It is about becoming internally anchored. It is the art of rebuilding your own company, of learning how to be with your thoughts without being ruled by them, of sitting with emotion without needing someone else to hold it for you, of listening deeply without rushing to respond. Reconnecting with your inner monk is also about boundaries. When you spend time alone, you realize how much of your peace depends on what you allow in, not just physically, but energetically. Every text, every call, every notification, every demand. These are doors, and solitude teaches you how to close them without guilt. In this quiet space, self-respect returns, not as an idea, but as a felt experience. You stop offering yourself to those who do not honor your presence. You stop explaining your silence. You stop apologizing for needing space, because you know that protecting your energy is not selfish, it is sacred. Solitude also restores your intuition. When you are constantly around others, your inner voice becomes muffled. You start tuning into their wants, their moods, their stories. But when you step away, that voice gets louder. It tells you what you actually feel, what you actually need, what is truly aligned. And it becomes easier to hear because nothing else is shouting over it. This clarity changes how you relate. You stop seeking out relationships to escape yourself. You stop choosing company just to fill time. You begin to enjoy people more because you no longer need them to fix something inside you. You are whole when you arrive, and that wholeness makes connection feel lighter. Spending time alone also sharpens your discernment. When you are alone, you see which thoughts are true and which are echoes. You notice which beliefs lift you and which ones crush you. You become the witness instead of the prisoner. And this witnessing becomes a habit that follows you even when you are not alone. This is why monks spend so much time in solitude, not to retreat from life, but to see it clearly, to stop reacting, to dissolve the false self, to purify the mind of its unconscious habits. You do not have to live in a monastery to touch this. You just need to create moments in your day where the world fades and your awareness deepens. Even a few minutes of mindful solitude can shift your entire mood. Close your eyes, feel your breath. Let thoughts come without chasing them. Let emotions rise without pushing them away. Be with yourself like you would sit beside a friend. No judgment, just presence. Solitude, practiced with mindfulness, becomes medicine. It calms the mind. It stabilizes emotion. It resets your nervous system. It gives you space to process what life throws at you without being swept into reaction. It becomes your refuge in a world that rarely pauses. The more you return to this space, the more you remember who you are without the noise, without the roles, without the performances. And that memory becomes your compass. It guides your choices. It sharpens your boundaries. It teaches you when to speak and when to remain still. This does not mean you avoid people. It means you stop losing yourself in them. You engage with life from fullness, not from lack. You stop asking others to rescue you from your own discomfort, because now you have learned how to hold it, to breathe with it, to learn from it. Solitude also teaches emotional maturity. You realize that not every feeling needs a response. Not every thought is a command. Not every trigger needs an explanation. You learn how to sit with discomfort without blaming it on anyone. You learn how to take full ownership of your inner world. This level of self-awareness creates natural distance from toxic influence. When you are full within, you are less likely to tolerate manipulation. You are less drawn to drama. You are less willing to let others dictate your emotional state, because now you know how it feels to be grounded, and you do not trade that for temporary connection. Rebuilding your sanctuary also helps you remember your values. In silence, you ask yourself the harder questions. What do I truly care about? What am I chasing and why? Whose voice is directing my life? And with each honest answer, you reclaim another piece of yourself. This sanctuary is not a place you escape to. It is a place you live from. Even in the middle of conflict, you can return to it. Even when surrounded by people, you can anchor in it. It becomes a presence inside you, not just a quiet room or an empty hour. To rebuild this space is to say yes to yourself. Not the version of you that others like, not the version that performs well, but the one who remains when there is nothing to prove, the one who breathes beneath the roles, the one who sees clearly, feels fully, and rests deeply. In the Buddhist path, this space is not a luxury. It is essential. Without it, practice becomes shallow. Without it, clarity fades. Without it, wisdom cannot take root. Solitude is not a sign of disconnection. It is the beginning of true relationship with yourself, with truth, with life as it is. Return to it often, protect it fiercely, let it cleanse you, let it hold you, let it rebuild what the world tried to dismantle. You are not lonely in your solitude. You are home. The more time you spend in solitude, the more you realize how much of your emotional life has been shaped by external noise. You begin to notice how often your peace was handed over to someone else's words, moods, or silence. You feel the freedom of no longer reacting, of no longer being tangled in someone else's chaos. But one question remains, and it goes deeper than boundaries or distance. Why did their behavior have so much power in the first place? Why did your mind collapse every time someone was rude, dismissive, or unkind? This is the illusion of emotional hijacking, the false belief that others create your suffering. But the truth is harder and more freeing. Your grasping and your aversion are the real cause. It is easy to blame discomfort on the people who triggered it, their sharp tone, their disapproval, their betrayal. But the Buddha taught that suffering is not born from what happens. It is born from how the mind holds what happens. The moment you grasp at approval, you fear its loss. The moment you push away discomfort, you fuel its return. This is the cycle. This is the trap. And this is where your liberation lives, not in changing others, but in seeing clearly what your mind is doing in response to them. When someone criticizes you, their words may enter your ears, but it is your mind that creates the suffering. It interprets the comment. It attaches meaning. It replays the moment. It makes it personal. The suffering does not come from their voice. It comes from your mind's reaction to their voice. And once you see this, you regain power. Grasping takes many forms: wanting to be liked, wanting to be understood, wanting someone to change, wanting a past wrong to be made right. These are not bad desires, but when you cling to them, they become chains. The tighter you hold, the more you suffer when they slip through your fingers. Aversion works the same way. You feel discomfort and try to push it away. You avoid people who remind you of pain. You resist any emotion that threatens your sense of control. But resistance is just another form of attachment. It keeps you locked in battle with what is, and as long as you fight the moment, you remain its prisoner. The mind wants a clean cause, a clear villain. It wants to point to someone and say, "You made me feel this way." But when you stop and look closer, you realize that emotions arise within. They are not injected by others. They are stirred, yes, but they are yours, and only you can decide how long they stay. This is not about blame. It is about responsibility, the kind that sets you free. Because if others truly caused your suffering, your peace would always depend on their behavior, on their healing, on their apology. But once you see that suffering begins with your own clinging and resisting, the path becomes yours again. Mindfulness makes this visible. You begin to catch the moment when a painful feeling rises. You pause. You watch the thought forming around it. You see how quickly the story builds. They don't respect me. This always happens. Why me? And you gently name it. Grasping, aversion, habit. You do not fight the thought. You do not try to replace it with a positive one. You observe it. You sit with the tension in your chest or the heat in your stomach. You breathe. You return to now. And slowly, the storm passes without dragging you with it. Over time, you begin to see patterns. Certain people stir certain reactions, not because they are powerful, but because your mind is conditioned. One person ignores you and you feel invisible. Another raises their voice and you feel small. But these feelings are not new. They are old. They are echoes. And these people are just mirrors. Once you recognize this, everything shifts. You stop taking things so personally. You stop needing everyone to act right in order to feel okay. You stop building your identity around being accepted or rejected, because you know that peace lives in the space between stimulus and response. This practice also protects your compassion. When you stop believing others cause your pain, you stop seeing them as enemies. You start seeing them as beings with their own karma, their own wounds, their own mind traps. You stop needing to attack or withdraw. You stay centered. And when you do get triggered, because you will, you meet it differently. You do not panic. You do not blame. You stay curious. What am I grasping at? What am I pushing away? What story is my mind telling me right now? This inquiry is not an escape from emotion. It is a doorway through it. You feel everything. You just stop adding layers. You stop feeding the fire with fuel from the past. You let the emotion rise, crest, and fall, like a wave that never needed to drown you. This understanding also reveals how much of your suffering is optional. Not the initial pain, but the narrative around it. The replaying, the self-judgment, the resentment. These are habits. They are not destiny, and they can be changed. The more you sit with this, the more you begin to trust your inner space. You know how to return, how to breathe through tension, how to feel without drowning, and others lose their grip on your peace, not because they changed, but because you no longer hand them control. This is freedom, not from life, but from the belief that life must always feel good, that people must always treat you well, that every emotion must be pleasant, that every interaction must go your way. You release all that, and in its place, you gain something far greater, unshakable peace. You also begin to understand that even joy can cause suffering when clung to. Even love can hurt when tied to expectation. The mind turns even beauty into grasping if left unchecked. So you love, but lightly. You feel joy, but without needing it to stay. You remain present, but not possessed. This is not detachment from life. It is a deeper intimacy with it. You are no longer reacting to a filtered version of the moment. You are seeing clearly, responding wisely, living fully. And when someone behaves badly, you do not deny the pain, but you do not build your identity around it either. You know who you are, you know where your peace comes from, and it is not from their approval, it is from your awareness. This clarity transforms your relationships. You stop entering them to fill a gap. You stop staying in them to avoid discomfort. You stop manipulating or shrinking to avoid loss. You are whole before the conversation even starts. And if a person triggers you, you thank them silently, because now you see what still needs attention. What belief is still gripping? What wound is still raw? And you return to your practice, not with shame, with kindness, with patience, with trust. This is the path the Buddha walked, not to avoid the world, but to stop being ruled by it, not to escape pain, but to understand its source, not to blame others, but to see clearly what the mind is doing. So the next time someone stirs something in you, pause, look within, ask gently, where is the clinging? Where is the resistance? And let that question guide you home. They are not the cause, they never were. But now, you see, and that seeing is the beginning of freedom. Once the illusion of emotional hijacking is broken, the world stops feeling like a battlefield. You are no longer trying to dodge every unpleasant word or rearrange your life around everyone's moods. You start realizing that peace has never been about changing what happens around you. It has always been about what you hold on to inside. And that's where a deeper layer of clarity begins. Because even when the mind no longer blames, it still clings, not just to expectations, but to history, emotional roles, lingering dialogues, and unspoken tensions. The space around your heart stays crowded. This is where spiritual minimalism becomes a path of liberation. Not about empty rooms, but about clear minds. Not about having less stuff, but about needing fewer emotional attachments to feel whole. When most people hear the word minimalism, they picture clean shelves, few belongings, white walls. But in Buddhism, simplicity is not about aesthetics. It is about freedom. It is about removing what clutters your inner space, what takes your attention away from the present moment, and what weighs down your ability to breathe fully. Spiritual minimalism is not just about cleaning your house. It is about cleaning your heart. There are relationships that live in your mind long after they've ended in the physical world. Conversations you replay, outcomes you hoped for, judgments that still echo when things go quiet. Each one takes up space. Each one leaks energy. And most people carry far more of these than they realize. The weight is invisible, but the exhaustion is not. Emotional clutter often starts with small things. You read between the lines of a message. You dwell on why someone didn't say goodbye. You keep thinking about what you could have said differently in an argument. These moments collect. They turn into mental folders you open again and again, not to heal, but to relive. This is the mind's version of hoarding, and just like physical clutter, it creates chaos and blocks clarity. Spiritual minimalism begins with awareness. You start to notice where your energy goes when the body is still, where your thoughts drift when you're walking alone, whose name still brings tension, What memories still make your stomach tighten? These are not just random thoughts. They are signs of attachments you have not released. Not because they are too strong, but because they have become familiar, part of your identity, part of your story. Letting go of this clutter does not mean forgetting. It means choosing not to carry. It means saying, I do not need to mentally revisit this wound to prove it mattered. I do not need to relive this moment to honor my pain. I can release without erasing. I can clear space without denying what was real. One of the most powerful tools in Buddhist practice is reflection, asking simple but honest questions. Is this thought serving me? Is this emotional loop bringing me closer to peace or pulling me further from it? Would I keep this memory if it cost me my presence? Spiritual minimalism invites you to treat your inner world like sacred space, to only keep what supports clarity, compassion, and freedom, and to let go of what drags your energy backward into conflict, comparison, or craving. This also means stepping back from emotional roles that drain you. The fixer, the peacemaker, the one who always listens but is never heard, the one who pretends everything is fine to keep others comfortable. These roles may have once felt necessary, even noble, but over time they crowd your spirit. They take up space that should be used for stillness, creativity, or joy. You begin to ask, who am I when I'm not constantly holding someone else together? Who am I when I'm not defined by being the strong one? Who am I when I stop absorbing emotions that are not mine? Removing emotional clutter also involves boundaries, not just external ones, but internal ones. You stop letting every feeling grow into a storm. You stop letting every story enter your inner home. Not every text needs a response. Not every invitation needs your presence. Not every request for help means you're obligated to give. And just like clearing a room, you start with what is easiest. You let go of the resentment that's been rehearsed 100 times. You stop returning to the image of the one who disappointed you. You notice the habit of seeking closure where there is none, and you begin to release that need. You may even discover that what you're holding on to is not a person, but a version of yourself that was shaped by that relationship. The one who felt needed, the one who felt valuable through sacrifice, the one who didn't speak up. And letting go of the clutter means letting go of her too, not to deny her, but to evolve beyond her. Spiritual minimalism teaches you that peace is not something you wait for. It is something you create by what you choose to let in and what you choose to release. You don't need a perfect life to feel calm. You need a clear space within it. This practice changes how you relate. You no longer chase emotional highs from others to feel full. You no longer tolerate relationships that thrive on guilt, obligation, or confusion. You do not wait for others to make your peace possible. You create the conditions yourself. And this simplicity begins to show in your day-to-day choices. You stop over-explaining. You stop apologizing for your silence. You stop attending every conversation that invites your energy. You begin to live more by intention and less by reaction. Spiritual minimalism also involves gentleness. You do not rip out emotions like weeds. You sit with them, you name them, you ask them why they're still here. And when it is time, you bow to them and say, "Thank you." Then you set them down. The mind, like a room, needs regular clearing, not just once, but often, Because new experiences will arrive, new stories will try to take root, and the practice is not about never collecting, it is about learning to release as easily as you hold. One powerful habit is to begin and end each day with a check-in. Where is my energy caught? Who am I still holding in my heart space? What am I mentally rehearsing that no longer needs to be carried? These questions are not rituals of shame. They are acts of inner hygiene, of emotional clarity. You also begin to feel the difference between thoughts that nourish and thoughts that drain. Some memories uplift, others only reopen wounds. Some emotions clarify, others confuse. You begin to trust the feeling of lightness, of ease, of breath moving without effort, and that feeling becomes your compass. The more space you create, the more life flows. Ideas come more easily, rest deepens, conversations become more present. You are no longer sorting through layers of emotional clutter to show up. You are simply here, and people begin to notice. Not because you talk about your practice, but because your energy shifts. You become less reactive, more at peace, more present, more honest. Not everyone will like it, but that's part of the clearing too. You stop editing yourself for comfort. This is not about becoming emotionally empty. It is about becoming emotionally free. Your heart is not closed. It is uncluttered. Your mind is not blank. It is focused. Your presence is not disconnected. It is intentional. And over time, this inner spaciousness becomes your default. You no longer hold on to what hurts just because it's familiar. You no longer let unresolved stories follow you like shadows. You live clean, clear, free. This is spiritual minimalism, a practice, a path, a way of being that honors your energy and protects your peace. As you begin to clear emotional clutter and create inner spaciousness, something beautiful starts to happen. You feel lighter. Your breath deepens. Your thoughts become clearer. But along with this peace, another challenge often arises, the misunderstanding that letting go means you no longer care. That stepping back means you are cold. That creating space means you are giving up. This confusion between detachment and disrespect is one of the biggest barriers to healing. Because if you believe that boundaries hurt others, you will keep abandoning yourself just to prove you are kind. But real detachment is not rejection. It is reverence for both paths, for yours and theirs. It is compassion in motion. Many people carry guilt when they begin to detach. They worry that creating space will be taken the wrong way, that reducing contact or saying no will seem harsh or selfish. And because of this, they stay longer than they should. They keep engaging in painful dynamics. They hold on to relationships that drain them, not out of love, but out of fear that loving from a distance is unloving at all. But Buddhism teaches that true compassion is not about rescuing others. It is about seeing clearly. It is about knowing the difference between helping and enabling, between connection and dependency, between presence and self-sacrifice. Detachment does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop collapsing. When you detach from someone, you are not removing them from your heart. You are removing yourself from the grip of their behavior. You are choosing peace over control. You are choosing to honor your boundaries even when others don't understand them. This is not ego. This is wisdom. One of the reasons detachment feels so hard is because the ego often ties identity to roles: the helper, the loyal one, the healer. And when you stop playing that role, the ego says, you are failing. But detachment is not about abandoning people. It is about refusing to abandon yourself. In every relationship, there is a sacred space where your responsibility ends and theirs begins. If you cross that line too often, even with good intentions, you start living their life for them. You start trying to manage their emotions, their growth, their responses, and in the process, you lose your center. Detachment restores that balance. It places you back in your own lane. This does not mean you stop engaging altogether. It means you engage with clarity. You speak honestly. You listen openly. But you no longer carry what is not yours. You no longer try to fix, convince, or absorb. You do your part, and then you release. Compassionate detachment also means recognizing that others have their own karma, their own lessons, their own timing. You cannot speed up someone's awakening by holding their hand through every storm. Sometimes, the most compassionate thing you can do is step back and let the lesson unfold. Not to punish, but to empower. You are not cold for choosing distance. You are not selfish for protecting your energy. You are not unkind for declining to carry someone else's burden. Detachment is not a lack of love. It is love with wisdom. It is saying, I care deeply, but I will not sacrifice my peace to stay close. I will not trade clarity for comfort. I will not abandon myself to keep a connection alive. This is especially important in relationships where patterns of guilt, manipulation, or emotional dependency are present. In those spaces, your detachment will be tested. The moment you pull back, you may be accused of being distant or uncaring, but these accusations often come from people who benefited from your overextension. And your job is not to explain your healing to those committed to misunderstanding it. Your job is to remain steady in your truth. Healthy detachment also teaches others how to meet you with respect. When you stop overgiving, you create room for reciprocity. When you stop reacting, you allow others to reflect. When you stop absorbing, you encourage others to take responsibility. Sometimes, your silence is the first time someone hears themselves. This practice requires inner strength, because you may miss them. You may want to go back to the comfort of closeness, even if that closeness cost you your clarity. But over time, you begin to feel the power of living in alignment, of not needing to explain every boundary, of not needing to justify every choice. You know why you stepped back, and that knowing is enough. Detachment is also not an all-or-nothing practice. It can exist within connection. You can love someone and not try to change them. You can support someone and not lose yourself. You can stay present and still say no. It is not about cutting ties. It is about releasing control. Sometimes the greatest kindness is giving people space to be exactly who they are without trying to shape them. And the greatest respect is offering them the dignity to walk their own path, even if it leads away from you. This is not abandonment. This is faith in yourself, in them, in the unfolding of life. You begin to see that closeness is not the only measure of love. Presence does not always require proximity. Connection does not always require conversation. Sometimes the deepest care is holding space in silence. Sometimes the purest love is wishing someone well while walking away. This clarity also frees you from over-explaining. Detachment means you no longer feel the need to perform your worthiness. You no longer seek validation through sacrifice. You trust that your intentions are clean, and that is enough. In Buddhist practice, this kind of detachment is rooted in upekkha, equanimity, a calm balance that neither clings nor pushes away, that sees the rising and falling of connection without panic, that holds love without grasping. When you live this way, people may not understand your peace. They may say, "You changed." They may try to pull you back into old roles. But you are not here to live inside someone else's comfort zone. You are here to live in truth. And this truth is simple. Your peace matters. Your clarity matters. Your path matters. You do not need to prove your love by breaking yourself. You do not need to stay entangled to prove loyalty. Real love honors both people. It gives space. It allows change. It respects silence. Detachment also helps dissolve codependency. When you stop needing someone to be okay for you to feel okay, you begin to heal. You begin to breathe. You begin to make choices from a place of alignment instead of fear. And you learn to forgive, not just others, but yourself, for staying too long, for giving too much, for losing your way. You forgive, not to forget, but to free the energy still tied to that moment. You bless it, you release it, you continue. This is what compassionate detachment looks like. Strong, quiet, clear. It is not passive, it is not angry, it is not dramatic. It is calm, it is honest, it is rooted in deep love, not the kind that demands, but the kind that allows. So, if you find yourself needing space, take it. If you feel the pull to let go, honor it. If your heart knows it is time to step back, trust it. This is not disrespect. This is devotion to your peace, your growth, and the sacred unfolding of life as it is. Detachment brings peace, but not always closure. Even after stepping back with clarity, even after building boundaries with compassion, there are moments when the past still speaks, not loudly, not constantly, but in small emotional echoes that show up unexpectedly, a name that still tightens the chest, a memory that replays itself during quiet moments, a sharp feeling that rises for no clear reason. This is not obsession. This is residue. Emotional ghosts that linger in the unseen corners of the heart, not because you want them there, but because the energy tied to that story was never fully released. And in Buddhist practice, that residue is more than memory. It is karmic weight. It is what keeps the mind from resting. These emotional ghosts are not always tied to people still in your life. Often they belong to those long gone. A person you once trusted who left without explanation. A friendship that ended in silence. A betrayal that was never spoken about again. The mind may say it has moved on, but the body remembers. The nervous system remembers. The heart continues to flinch when a similar pattern appears. This is not a sign of failure. It is a sign that the mind did not finish processing, that something was left unhealed. Resentment often lives under the surface as unspoken grief, not just over what happened, but over what didn't, what you never got to say, what never got acknowledged, what never made sense. And because the mind resists sitting with this kind of ambiguity, it tries to solve it by replaying. It thinks that if it reviews the moment enough times, a solution will appear. But there is no mental resolution for karmic residue. It must be released through awareness, not analysis. One of the first steps in cleansing this residue is recognizing it without shame. You may think, it's been years, I shouldn't still care. But this only buries the pain deeper. Buddhist practice teaches that healing does not follow a schedule. The depth of your pain is not a weakness, it is a doorway, and when a ghost returns, it is not haunting you. It is reminding you that something within is asking to be seen with new eyes. These emotional imprints can become entangled with your identity if left unchecked. You start to define yourself by the roles others placed on you. The rejected one, the one who gave too much, the one who was never enough. These labels are not truths. They are reactions to unprocessed moments. Releasing them does not require that the past be rewritten. It requires that your relationship to it be revised. Mindfulness helps you meet these ghosts without judgment. When the old feeling rises, you sit with it. You do not push it away. You do not try to explain it. You name it gently. This is the echo of that goodbye. This is the fear that was planted that day. This is the part of me still waiting to be understood. You give space not to wallow, but to allow, because allowing is what begins to dissolve. You also begin to notice when new interactions are colored by old residue. Someone forgets to respond to a message, and the mind spirals into abandonment. Someone raises their voice, and the body tightens with old fear. These are not overreactions. They are invitations to look inward and ask, is this the current moment, or is this the past reappearing? Clarity lives in that question, and with clarity comes freedom. Compassion becomes essential in this process, not just for others, but for yourself. You forgive yourself for not letting go sooner, for not healing faster, for still feeling hurt. Because the truth is, the more honest you are about the presence of these emotional ghosts, the more power you have to release them. Rituals can also be powerful in clearing residue, not as superstition, but as embodied intention. Writing a letter you never send, saying out loud what you were never able to say, lighting a candle and visualizing the release of that person's grip on your heart. These actions do not change the past. They shift your relationship to it. They declare to the nervous system, this story no longer defines me. In Buddhism, karma is not just action, it is mental formation, thought patterns, emotional loops, energy that repeats. When you hold on to resentment, you are holding on to a karmic thread, one that keeps pulling you backward. Cleansing that thread does not mean forgetting, it means stopping the reattachment, stopping the reactivation. It means gently closing the loop so that your energy can return to you. Meditation becomes a tool of release, not by pushing the ghosts away, but by observing them, watching the memory rise, watching the feeling intensify, watching the story appear, and then letting it pass, again and again, until one day it rises and carries no charge, until one day the name no longer stings, until one day the face no longer holds power. This does not happen overnight. It happens slowly. through presence, through patience, through repetition. Each time you choose awareness over reaction, the residue weakens. Each time you breathe instead of replay, the thread loosens. Each time you witness without fueling, the energy dissolves. Letting go of these ghosts also requires releasing the hope that things could have been different, that they might still return and explain, that they might see what they did. This hope is another chain. It binds you to a version of reality that never came. Releasing it is not defeat. It is maturity. It is saying, I do not need closure to close this chapter. I do not need apology to be at peace. You begin to rebuild yourself in the absence of those old roles. The self that is not reactive, the self that is not waiting, the self that is not defined by someone else's story. This rebuilding is quiet, often unseen, but deeply transformative. You wake up one day and notice you are no longer haunted, not because the ghost left, but because you stopped feeding it. Spiritual cleansing is not always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it looks like walking away without announcing it. Sometimes it looks like deleting a message you never sent. Sometimes it looks like breathing through the urge to bring up the past. These are all acts of release. You also learn to protect the space you've cleared. Just as a clean room requires maintenance, so does a clear heart. You stay mindful of what conversations you enter, what stories you rehearse, what memories you revisit. You begin to curate your mental space with care. Forgiveness may or may not come. That's not always the goal. Sometimes the goal is neutrality, to feel nothing when you hear their name, to not be pulled toward love or hate, just stillness. That is peace, that is healing, that is the final letting go. You stop needing justice to move forward. You stop needing acknowledgement to release the bond. You take responsibility for your energy and call it back home. This is the work of cleansing karmic residue. It is deep, it is subtle, it is sacred, and it returns your life to you, one breath at a time. Cleansing emotional residue brings a sense of emptiness, but not in the way most people fear. It is not a hollow void. It is space, breathing room, a clear field where something new and grounded can begin to grow. But even in this calm, life continues to speak. Conversations happen, messages come, people project, words still carry energy, and sometimes those words come dressed in charm but built to manipulate, or masked in guilt but designed to control. This is where the next layer of practice begins, learning how to meet language with awareness. This is where right speech becomes your emotional armor. Buddhism teaches that speech is not neutral. It can either clarify or confuse. It can build connection or fuel harm. Words are energy in motion. When used without mindfulness, they entangle. When used with precision, they liberate. But right speech is not only about how you speak. It is also about how you receive speech, how you respond to the words designed to trigger, how you navigate verbal traps without stepping into them, how you protect your mind from manipulation by anchoring in clarity. Verbal traps are everywhere. Some are obvious, like blame or insults. Others are more subtle. A question wrapped in guilt. A compliment followed by control. A passive remark meant to provoke shame. These patterns are not always malicious. Sometimes they are habitual, unconscious ways people try to get their needs met. But when you are not aware of them, they pull you in, they hook your attention, they trigger your defenses, and suddenly your peace is gone. Right speech teaches that language must be truthful, beneficial, timely, and spoken with a kind heart. When someone speaks to you without these qualities, you have a choice. You can mirror their tone, or you can stay rooted in yours. You can enter their storm, or you can stand in clarity. This begins with observation. When a manipulative or aggressive phrase is spoken, pause. Do not rush to respond. Notice your body, your breath, your mental story. Often, the urge to react is stronger than the need to understand. But right speech is built on awareness, not impulse. Ask yourself, is this question real or is it bait? Is this comment sincere or is it control disguised as care? Not every question deserves an answer. Not every tone deserves your energy. You do not need to explain yourself to someone trying to win, not understand. When speech is rooted in guilt, it often sounds like flattery mixed with disappointment. I thought you cared more than this. I guess I was wrong about you. These phrases are not invitations to connection. They are tools of control. They are designed to make you feel responsible for someone else's discomfort. Right speech helps you recognize these traps and meet them with silence or clarity, not defensiveness. You do not need to argue with guilt. You do not need to explain your boundaries. You can simply state, "That does not feel true to me," and remain still. You can say, "I hear that you're upset, but I'm not taking that on," and move on without flinching. Aggressive speech tries to overpower. It is fast, loud, and designed to provoke. It wants a fight. It feeds on reaction. But the moment you react, you have entered the game. The practice is not to match force with force. The practice is to slow the tempo, to lower the volume, to speak with measured clarity. Right speech, in moments of aggression, is not weakness. It is presence. You respond with truth, but without venom. You say only what is needed. You do not match their fire. You hold your own center, and in doing so, you reveal their chaos without comment. Manipulative speech often includes half-truths, vague accusations, or emotional setups. It wants you to fill in the gaps, to defend yourself against things not clearly said. But right speech does not play along. It names what is unclear. Can you say what you mean directly? Can you clarify what you're asking for? This disrupts the pattern. It brings the hidden intention to the surface, and once it is visible, it often dissolves, because most manipulation depends on ambiguity, on you assuming their meaning and reacting to it. When you ask for clarity, you take back control. Another form of verbal entrapment is triangulation, when someone brings in a third person to pressure or shame you. Everyone agrees you've changed. They were all saying how distant you've become. Right speech teaches you to resist being pulled into group dynamics you did not consent to. You can say, "I prefer to speak directly," or "I don't respond to second-hand messages." This returns the conversation to its rightful place, between two people in real time with full awareness. Right speech also includes when not to speak. Some conversations are not worth having, not because you do not care, but because the space is not clean, the intention is not clear, the words are not rooted in truth. Silence can be the most powerful response, not as withdrawal, but as strength. You begin to choose your words with care and your silences with even more care. You speak less, but when you do, it lands with clarity. You stop performing, you stop defending, you stop over-explaining. And in that space, your energy returns. This practice also frees you from reactive language. You no longer say things just to fill the silence. You no longer offer explanations just to soothe discomfort. You speak when your words bring truth or peace. You stay quiet when they do not. This is not avoidance, this is mastery. Over time, you begin to feel the difference in your body. The moments when a sentence is rising from fear, the moments when a response is loaded with self-protection, and you pause, you wait, you breathe, you choose again. Right speech also teaches listening, not just to what is said, but to how it feels, to the energy behind the words, to what is not being said. Listening becomes an act of mindfulness. You are not waiting to reply. You are observing. You are noticing which words open and which ones close, which ones connect and which ones control. You no longer fear confrontation because you know how to stay grounded in speech that does no harm. You know how to hold a boundary without cutting. You know how to exit a trap without anger. This is not just communication, this is liberation. You also begin to clean your own language. You notice the times you speak with hidden motives, the times you exaggerate, the times you use silence as a weapon, and you return to the precept. Is it true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? This is how speech becomes a path, not just a tool. It trains your mind, it reveals your habits, it teaches you how to relate with integrity, and the more you practice, the more protected you feel. Not because others are kind, but because you are clear. You stop being pulled into verbal battles. You stop trying to win arguments. You stop measuring your self-worth by how others respond to your words. You speak and release. You listen and stay centered. You do not need to prove your truth. You only need to live it. And in this space, manipulation loses its grip. Aggression cannot land. Guilt dissolves, because your energy is no longer available for entanglement. Your language becomes a reflection of your practice. Your clarity becomes your shield. Your speech becomes your path. Right speech trains the mind to respond with clarity instead of reaction. It breaks the cycle of verbal manipulation by anchoring you in presence, truth, and restraint. It teaches you to speak less, but with more power, to listen deeply, but without becoming entangled. But even after words are handled skillfully, there remains a deeper challenge: what to do with someone's pain, especially when it's close, especially when it spills into your space. How do you remain compassionate without being consumed? How do you witness suffering without letting it drain or define you? This is where the next practice begins: the ability to observe pain without absorbing it, to remain present and kind without becoming the emotional sponge for someone else's unresolved inner world. Most people were never taught how to hold space without losing themselves inside it. From an early age, you may have been rewarded for caretaking, for fixing others, for sacrificing your emotional clarity in order to make someone else feel better. Over time, this becomes a habit. You start to associate love with absorption. You start to believe that being a good person means taking on other people's suffering. That kindness means emotional merging. That compassion means you must carry what hurts them so they don't have to carry it alone. But Buddhism offers a different path, one that is equally compassionate and far more sustainable, a way to care without collapsing. This path begins with understanding the difference between empathy and entanglement. Empathy is the ability to feel what another feels, to sense their sorrow, their tension, their grief. It opens the heart. But when empathy is not grounded in mindfulness, it becomes entanglement. You start to confuse their feelings with your own. You take on their emotional weight and call it care. You absorb their pain and call it love. But love does not require you to disappear. The Buddha taught that suffering arises from attachment. This includes attachment to other people's emotional states. When someone around you is in pain, your own discomfort often pushes you to react. You want to fix it, solve it, heal it, absorb it, so that your own nervous system can calm down. But reacting to someone's pain out of your own discomfort is not compassion. It is unconscious attachment. Real compassion remains steady. It holds space. It says, I see you, I hear you, I care, but I do not become you. One of the most powerful practices in Buddhism is the cultivation of equanimity. This is not coldness. It is not detachment in the modern, avoidant sense. It is the strength to remain open without being overwhelmed, to stand in the presence of suffering without running from it, and without becoming consumed by it. Equanimity says, I will stay with you, but I will not carry what is not mine. This requires inner discipline, because your instincts may tell you to rush in, to soften every harsh feeling, to make others comfortable. But the truth is, not every pain is yours to resolve. Not every emotion is yours to hold. You are not a dumping ground for unresolved karma. You are a conscious witness, a grounded presence. This doesn't mean you walk away from people who are hurting. It means you learn how to stay without drowning. You become like a tree, rooted, present, offering shade but not absorbing the fire. You can listen deeply without internalizing. You can feel deeply without reacting. You can care without carrying. Start by noticing what happens in your body when someone close to you is in pain. Do you tense? Do you mirror their anxiety? Do you feel responsible for making them feel better? Do you immediately offer advice or start problem solving? These are habits, not truths, and with mindfulness, you can begin to change them. When someone speaks from their suffering, pause. Before reacting, before absorbing, take a breath. Ground yourself in the moment. Remind yourself, this is their pain, not mine. I can care without merging. I can support without rescuing. The more you practice this, the more you realize that people do not always need you to fix them. Often, they just need space to be seen, to be heard, and that space must be clean, free from your need to manage, to impress, to take over. Holding this kind of space is a gift. It teaches you how to respect boundaries, not just theirs, but yours. It teaches you how to remain emotionally sovereign. You stop letting your mood rise and fall based on someone else's storm. You stop tying your worth to your ability to relieve others of their pain. You stop measuring your compassion by how much suffering you can absorb. And in that space, something changes. you become more present, more trustworthy, more clear. Others begin to feel safe with you, not because you take away their pain, but because your presence does not add confusion. You become the calm in their storm, not another wave. This also protects your energy. When you absorb others' suffering unconsciously, you burn out. You become resentful. You start to pull away, not because you don't care, but because you don't know how to stay without drowning. Learning to witness without absorbing keeps your heart open and your energy balanced. This practice deepens your compassion because now it is no longer reactive. It is chosen. It is clean. You can walk with someone through their darkest moments without trying to rush them into the light. You can sit with someone's sorrow without turning it into your own story. And you begin to see how often people confuse intensity with care, how often emotional fusion is mistaken for closeness. But real closeness does not require fusion. It requires presence. Real love does not demand absorption. It demands awareness. Over time, you learn to recognize the signs of emotional absorption: fatigue that has no clear source, anxiety that isn't yours, mood swings triggered by someone else's story. These are clues, signals that you have started to carry what was never placed in your hands, and when you see it, you return. To breathe, to presence, to the truth that your peace is not selfish, it is service. Because when you are centered, you can actually help. Not from panic, not from guilt, but from wisdom, from stillness. You can offer a hand without losing your ground. You can give support without becoming the structure. You can love without losing yourself. This also invites others to their own power. When you stop absorbing their pain, they are faced with their own emotions. They are invited to meet themselves, and that is where real transformation begins. Not in you carrying their suffering, but in you holding a mirror of clarity. This kind of presence is rare. It is powerful. It is not loud. It is not dramatic. It does not rush in or shout over pain. It listens. It watches. It remains. You are not here to suffer with everyone you love. You are here to bring light, not to dim yourself to match the room. And when you stay rooted in that truth, you give others permission to rise, not because you lifted them, but because your presence reminded them that they could stand. Observing without absorbing is a path, a practice, a skill. It takes time. You will falter. You will catch yourself merging. But each time you return to awareness, you reclaim your peace. Let their suffering rise. Let it speak. Let it breathe. But let it remain theirs. You remain here, clear, kind, unshaken. Remaining open-hearted without becoming the container for someone else's suffering teaches a rare kind of strength. It sharpens your boundaries without closing your compassion. It trains you to witness emotion without drowning in it. But even as this balance grows, one last thread remains tightly wound at the core of most reactions: the feeling of being hurt, disrespected, judged, rejected. The part of the mind that flinches at insult, stiffens with shame, burns with offense. And the question slowly rises: who is it that is being wounded? What exactly is being threatened? This is where the teachings on non-self begin to untangle the very roots of emotional suffering. Because if there is no fixed self, then there is nothing that can truly be harmed. Offense only exists when the ego insists on solidity, and understanding this truth sets you free. In Buddhism, the concept of anatta, or non-self, does not mean you do not exist. It means that what you call self is not a single, unchanging entity. It is a process, a stream of thoughts, feelings, habits, reactions. And the suffering comes not from having a self, but from believing it is fixed, fragile, and must be protected at all costs. Every insult that hurts, every rejection that lingers, every judgment that stings, they all land on a false belief in a permanent identity. When someone criticizes you, the pain does not come from their words. It comes from the idea that their words threaten something solid inside you. The mind clings to labels: smart, kind, loyal, strong, and when someone suggests otherwise, it scrambles to defend them. It resists. It tightens, because it believes a real me is being attacked. But the more you study the self, the more you realize that it is made up of parts that constantly change. Moods shift, thoughts appear and dissolve. Identity reshapes itself with every experience. So what exactly is being wounded? The ego creates a storyline around who you think you are. It builds its structure out of praise, success, personal history, but it also includes fear, failure, and shame. When the story is pleasant, the ego clings. When the story is challenged, it fights. And this fight is where offense is born. Not in the words of others, but in the internal resistance to having your self-image disturbed. Understanding this does not mean you become passive or numb. It means you begin to observe your reactions with more clarity. When offense rises, you no longer ask, "How could they say that?" You ask, "What part of me feels threatened and why? What belief is being defended? What story is being protected?" This shift in questioning turns reaction into insight. Sometimes the insult itself is not even personal. It could be someone projecting their pain. It could be a reflection of their own inner chaos. But if your ego needs to be seen in a certain way, it will still take it personally. It will still feel the sting. The pain comes from identification, not from truth. To see that clearly is to disarm the whole mechanism. It is to feel a reaction rise and not follow it. It is to smile at your mind's attempt to build a wall and gently ask it to sit down. You begin to realize that the part of you that is offended is not your true self. It is a role, a mask, a temporary construction. This understanding gives you room to move, room to hear criticism without collapse, room to be misunderstood without needing to explain, room to be rejected without losing self-respect. Because when the ego loosens, clarity grows, and with clarity, offense cannot root itself. You start to notice how often the mind looks for injury. A tone of voice, a missed text, a subtle look. The ego watches for anything that might confirm its fear of being unworthy or unseen. But this hypervigilance creates suffering. It keeps the nervous system on alert. It keeps the heart closed. It fuels a life of defense. Letting go of the ego's grip means stepping out of that cycle. It means not needing to be right in every conversation. It means not measuring your worth by how others treat you. It means not taking rejection as a mirror of your value. You begin to live from presence, not from identity. This is not easy at first. because the ego has convinced you that it is you, that to protect it is to survive. But every time you pause instead of defend, every time you reflect instead of retaliate, you weaken that illusion. You create space between stimulus and response, and in that space, freedom lives. Meditation helps deepen this space. Sitting with your breath, watching your thoughts, you begin to see how fast identity forms. One thought says, "I am this." Another says, "I am not that." A memory appears, and suddenly you are that version of yourself again. But through consistent practice, you begin to see it's all passing, all fluid, all conditioned. And this seeing dissolves the need to protect what isn't real. You may still feel emotions rise when someone says something sharp, but now you watch. Now you inquire. Now you question the story before it takes over. You do not suppress the feeling. You see through it. And in that seeing, it loses its grip. This clarity also softens your view of others. You realize that when people lash out, they are also defending a fragile sense of self. Their ego is reacting. Their identity feels threatened. And just as you are learning to disarm your own, you no longer need to attack theirs. You begin to respond with less heat, with more stillness, with fewer words. Not because you are superior, but because there is nothing left to protect. When you are not tied to a rigid identity, insult cannot land. When you are not trying to prove your value, praise loses its grip. You are free. And in this freedom, relationships change. You no longer need to be admired to feel whole. You no longer fear criticism. You no longer depend on others to reflect your worth. You know who you are beyond words, beyond roles, beyond ego. This does not make you passive. It makes you real. It allows you to speak truth without aggression, to hold boundaries without defensiveness, to admit mistakes without shame. Because your self-worth is no longer a performance. It is a presence. You carry yourself differently. You listen more. You talk less. You stay longer in silence. Not because you are unsure, but because you are grounded. Your energy is no longer scattered by offense. Your peace is no longer traded for approval. Living this way does not make you invincible. It makes you fluid. Like water, you can be touched but not held, stirred but not stained, moved but not defined. And if someone tries to wound you, you ask quietly, "What part of me believes this wound is real?" And you sit with that question, not to solve it, but to see it. No self to wound means no self to protect, no mask to defend, no role to perform, just presence, just breath, just awareness. And in that awareness, everything changes. Because now, even offense becomes a teacher, a reminder that you are still identifying with something solid, and that reminder points you back to freedom. After practicing the empty chair, something shifts. You've spoken the words you never got to say. You've let the energy settle. You've made peace, not with what happened, but with the fact that it no longer needs to live in your hands. Yet even with all that release, the craving can remain. Craving for a reply, for closure, for acknowledgement, for validation that the pain was real. And it's in that craving, silent but stubborn, that the final attachment often hides. This is not the craving of need, but of narrative, the urge to know what it all meant. the impulse to have your experience confirmed, the wish to be seen by the very ones who couldn't or wouldn't see you. And this is where insight meditation, or Vipassana, begins its deeper work. It teaches you how to watch craving itself, not to feed it, not to fix it, but to let it unravel on its own. In Vipassana, the instruction is simple but radical. Observe, not suppress, not solve, just observe. Watch the breath, watch sensation, watch thought, watch craving rise like smoke from a fire, and don't touch it, don't judge it, don't try to make it go away, just stay still. This is not a mental game. It is a full-body witnessing of impermanence in real time. Craving comes, craving peaks, craving fades, and if you remain present, you begin to see that no craving lasts, not even the ones that feel endless. The craving for closure from toxic people is especially sticky. It disguises itself as healing. The mind says, if I just understood why they left, I could let go. If they just admitted what they did, I could move on. If they said I mattered, I could stop hurting. But what's really happening is a bargaining with reality, an attempt to get the past to apologize. And as long as that craving remains unquestioned, peace stays out of reach. Vipassana does not argue with craving. It does not replace it with affirmations. It does not reason with it. It sits beside it like a quiet friend. It watches. This watching begins to pull the mind out of its loops. Every time the thought arises, maybe they'll reach out, maybe they finally understand, you notice it. You feel the sensation it brings, tightness, longing, hope, and you let it pass. Craving loses power when it is seen clearly, not fought, not indulged, just seen. You begin to understand that the craving is not really for them, it's for relief, for inner stillness, for the end of the story. But when you give up the need for the story to be finished by them, you realize you can end it yourself, right here, right now, by not believing the craving's message. Meditation trains you in this moment-to-moment awareness. You stop seeking resolution in thoughts and start observing how thoughts behave. You begin to recognize patterns. The craving rises strongest at night, or after seeing their name, or when something reminds you of how things used to be. These patterns are not personal, they are mechanical, and when seen, they no longer control. You also notice how craving feels in the body. A clenching in the chest, a wave of heat, a slight tremble in the hands. Before Vipassana, you might have called this anxiety or heartbreak. But now, you label it simply sensation. And once it becomes sensation, it can dissolve. It is no longer a problem. It is just an arising, like a breeze, like a bird flying across the sky. Vipassana invites you to watch not just craving, but the entire structure of attachment. The subtle way the mind fantasizes about being chosen, the imaginary conversations, the internal rehearsals of how you would finally say what needs to be said. All of it is seen, and in that seeing, its grip loosens. You also notice the gaps, the moments when the craving isn't there, the moments when peace is natural. The mind wants to ignore these. It says, you're just distracting yourself. But through mindfulness, you realize those gaps are real, and they're longer than you thought. Craving is not constant. It comes in waves. It feels permanent only because you keep checking to see if it's still there. Insight grows when you stop identifying with the content of thought and start seeing the process. The craving for closure is not different from craving anything else. It arises, it promises relief, it fades, and no matter how often it comes, it is never you. It is a visitor, not a command, not a truth. This kind of detachment doesn't make you uncaring. It makes you more whole. You still remember what happened, but you no longer need someone else to name your experience for it to be valid. You no longer chase the story. You sit with the feeling, and it burns itself out. Over time, you begin to see craving as empty. Not bad, just hollow. It offers relief, but never delivers. You can watch the cycle play out without being inside it. A thought comes, they should have treated me better. A sensation follows, sadness in the throat, then silence, then stillness, and you remain. This is how healing begins to root itself, not in grand gestures, not in big moments, but in small choices to watch instead of react, to stay instead of chase, to feel instead of fix. Vipassana teaches you to trust the intelligence of awareness. It knows how to dissolve what clinging cannot. As the craving fades, something softer rises. Acceptance, not resignation, but clarity. A knowing that things ended as they did, that understanding may never come, that validation may never arrive. And it's okay, because your peace is not on hold anymore. You are no longer waiting. This practice also protects you from re-injury. When the craving is strong, you're more likely to reach out, to re-engage, to fall back into the same cycle. But with mindfulness, you can pause. You can notice the craving as a wave and choose not to ride it. You can feel the pull and remain seated. This is true power. And as craving dissolves, other things dissolve too. The need to be seen a certain way, the need to be liked, the need to be chosen. You no longer spend energy managing how others perceive you. You simply live. You simply breathe. Vipassana also helps you release the internal drama around the other person. They become just another being with their own suffering. You stop needing to label them as evil or broken. You stop needing to prove anything. You stop needing them to change. This freedom cannot be forced. It grows through consistent presence, through sitting, through watching, through returning again and again to the breath, the body, the thought, the sensation, craving for closure, for justice, for emotional payoff. All of it begins to feel like static noise, not because it isn't intense, but because it isn't truth. Vipassana shows you where truth lives, in silence, in breath, in seeing, and this seeing becomes your refuge, your teacher, your strength. As the craving for closure dissolves through deep observation, you begin to see just how much suffering is tied to the desire to stay involved, to be heard, to fix what was broken. But something else begins to grow in that silence, a strange kind of clarity, a knowing that not every situation requires your continued presence, that staying in the fire to prove your strength is not always wise, and that sometimes true maturity is found not in endurance but in discernment, the kind that looks at the flames and says, "This is not my fire to put out. This is not where I belong anymore." That realization is not defeat, it is freedom. Walking away is not always weakness. Sometimes it is the highest form of strength. There is a moment in every difficult dynamic where the mind starts cycling between extremes: stay and fight, stay and fix, stay and wait. These are the familiar roles. But what if none of those are needed? What if the most courageous act is to step out entirely, not to punish, not to flee, but to choose peace over drama, to recognize that your presence in the chaos is not making it better, just making it longer. In Buddhist thought, withdrawal is not escape. It is discernment. It is knowing when your continued involvement is only feeding the flames. There are situations so entangled, so energetically consuming, that your only way to heal is to step away completely. Not with anger, but with understanding. Not with shame, but with wisdom. This is not giving up. This is giving back the responsibility that was never yours to carry. The mind often resists this path because it equates withdrawal with failure. It says, if I leave, I've lost. If I stop helping, I've abandoned them. If I let go, I've betrayed the connection. But this is ego speaking, attachment speaking. The self that still wants to be the one who stays, the one who fixes, the one who is remembered as loyal. That story must be questioned. Walking away can be done in silence, with no grand announcement, no dramatic exit, just a simple closing of the door inside your heart, a quiet bow to what was and a turning toward what will be. This kind of departure is not visible to the outside world, but it is deeply felt within. It is the moment when your energy stops leaking, when your mind stops circling, when your nervous system finally exhales. One reason people stay in the fire is because they are afraid of what comes next. The empty space, the unknown, the silence that follows after a connection ends. But emptiness is not a threat. It is an invitation. When you stop trying to control a situation, life begins to reorganize itself around truth, around clarity, around peace. You may not know where you are going after you walk away. That's okay. Wisdom does not always offer a map. It simply says, this is not it. And that is enough to begin. You do not need to have a plan. You only need to have a boundary, a sense that your life energy is sacred and cannot be poured endlessly into someone else's chaos. In Buddhist practice, noble withdrawal is not done with hate. It is done with compassion. Compassion for the other, yes, but also for yourself. For the self that is tired, the self that has waited long enough, the self that deserves space to grow, to breathe, to return home. This kind of walking away is powerful because it is final, not as an act of aggression, but as an act of deep knowing. There is no revenge in it, no need to be seen, no need to be right. You simply know that staying any longer would be a form of self-betrayal, and so you go. You also realize that not all fires want to be put out. Some people feed on chaos, on conflict, on confusion. Your calmness threatens their pattern, your clarity disrupts their control, and so they keep pulling you in, not to heal, but to continue the loop. The moment you see this, you understand. Your presence is enabling it, not resolving it. Stepping out of that pattern is not cold. It is clear. You see the cycle, you see the cost, And you choose differently. You choose to protect your peace, to preserve your clarity, to prioritize your evolution. This choice is rarely applauded. People may call it selfish, may accuse you of being distant or cold, but only those who benefited from your self-sacrifice will resent your boundaries. And even then, your job is not to defend your peace. It is simply to live it. You begin to trust your inner signals more, the exhaustion you feel after every interaction, the dread before a conversation, the tightening in your body when you see their name. These are not inconveniences. They are messages, invitations to step back, to step out. Walking away with wisdom also means not looking back with regret. You do not second guess. You do not stalk their page. You do not re-enter just to check if things have changed. You close the chapter and keep walking. Not because you don't care, but because you care too much to keep circling a door that will never open differently. This path also involves grieving, not just the loss of the person or situation, but the loss of your role within it. The identity you built around being the fixer, the loyal one, the strong one. Letting go of those roles is painful, but necessary, because the version of you that needed to stay no longer matches who you're becoming. In the space that follows withdrawal, something new emerges. Stillness, softness, a sense of self that is not reactive, not tired, not tied to survival. This is not emptiness. This is foundation, a ground that is finally stable because it is no longer shaking from someone else's storm. And from that ground, you begin to build again, slowly, mindfully. You choose who to invite in. You notice which energies lift you and which ones pull you back into old roles. You stop tolerating confusion. You stop negotiating your worth. You stop rescuing people who never asked to be saved. You are no longer available for fires that were never yours to fight. You are no longer burning just to keep others warm. You are walking toward peace, even if it means walking alone. And in that solitude, you discover a truth that was always there. You were never weak for leaving. You were wise. You did not give up. You woke up. You've just walked through some of the deepest Buddhist teachings on detachment, not as an escape, but as a return to yourself. From recognizing emotional enmeshment and releasing the craving to fix others, to understanding the illusion of offense and finding peace without closure, this journey has been about one thing: freedom. Not freedom from people, but freedom from the mental habits that keep you tied to them. You've learned how silence protects, how Vipassana dissolves craving, how the inner monk heals through solitude, and how spiritual boundaries are acts of love, not rejection. Every lesson has been a step away from chaos and a step toward clarity. Because letting go of negative people isn't about pushing them away. It's about no longer letting them pull you out of your center. You are not here to carry their pain, absorb their projections, or fix their karma. You are here to be clear, kind, and unshakably you. If something in this resonated, if a part of you felt seen or strengthened, leave a comment below and write, "I choose clarity over chaos." That way, I'll know you're not just watching, you're evolving. And if you found peace in these words, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss another video like this. There's more to unlearn, more to release, and far more peace ahead. Until next time, rest deeply and let go gently.